Hello.
Can you hear me just fine?
I can hear you just fine. I cannot see you though, but I can hear you, so that is good.
I'll fix the seeing me problem very shortly. Just one moment. I gotta the intricacies of getting everything to work on a live stream. I don't think I'll ever quite get used to it, but I'm trying my best.
My friend has told me that when I move, they're going to teach me how to use my Stream Deck as buttons so that I
Hmm.
can switch between stuff more smoothly. Because they said they're very tired of me on these streams on live, clicking the Windows button or going to like my other monitor between Discord and OBS to get stuff back and forth, like, mute the desktop audio versus the my audio and stuff like that. So
I recently got a Stream Deck myself, though I haven't done much with it yet, so you might actually get the drop on me there.
yeah, no, I don't know if I'll ever do anything with mine. I got it like probably 4 months ago at this point. I got it when it was on a huge sale, and I've been moving, so I haven't had time to touch, and also I have no idea what I'm doing with it. So I'm waiting for them to tell me what to do. And when I move to the new place in like 2 weeks, I'm hoping that they'll tell me what to do, and then I'll actually be able to have a proper other monitor and be a little bit more of a professional.
That seems
But
fair.
you're a
Uh,
professional and you're here, so that's all that matters.
I am the loosest possible definition of a professional imaginable. We are straining the definition to include me, but I appreciate the compliment. I have a Stream Deck as well. The only thing I've actually hooked it up for is I have a button to switch chat from censored 1984 mode to non-censored 1985 mode, depending on whether or not I think YouTube will be particularly upset with the frequent swear words they deploy.
I've noticed that. And before we get into the discussion here, can you actually clarify why they're called 84 and 85 mode?
1984, like the book with George Orwell and Oceania and
Okay.
everything. And
See, that's what
1985, of course, the year they defeated Big Brother.
that's what I assumed, but I missed out on that stream, so I haven't quite picked up on that. And Nirvana didn't know himself either, from my understanding. So I've always been trying to figure that out. That's one of the things that I missed when I started streaming and wasn't able to watch you quite as much as I used to.
You know what's interesting? Oh, excuse me. Do you know who? Oh God, I'm actually forgetting his name now. He's one of the most famous comic writers in history. Alan Moore. Do you know who Alan Moore is?
Yeah.
I don't know if Alan Moore is gay, but he's spiritually gay, so we can talk about him, I think, in the context of this. But one of Alan Moore's comics was oh God, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen,
Yes.
which I was quite fond of. And when they did a serialized set of comics going into the future, canonically in that universe, 1984 happened, and one of the settings, which takes place, I think, in the 60s, is about like a post-Oceania England deconstructing, the Ministry of Truth and all the institutions that Oceania had propped up, and it's really, really interesting. And there's not really a point that I'm getting to with this, but I quite like that comic, I think.
I mean, it actually sounds quite interesting, and I think it's quite relevant today, especially with the events in Tennessee on the odd day that it happened. There's a lot of theory going around, and at least in my discussion groups, as to whether or not it was intentional for that day. And for the sake of comedy, I like to say that it was. Are you aware of what I'm talking about?
No, I don't think so.
So in Tennessee, they recently banned a new book in schools,
Oh,
in
oh,
public
I heard
schools.
about it in Texas. Yes,
Yes,
yes, the book bannings.
they did in Texas as well, but in Tennessee they banned Mouse, that what everyone's talking about, which is the common popular book that talks about the Holocaust.
Hmm.
I believe the guy who wrote it was writing it from stories told by his grandmother, if I'm not mistaken, or it might have been his mother. And they banned the book. The official like note for the ban came out on Holocaust Remembrance Day, which was a very interesting move. And it's especially interesting to me because immediately after they did this, even actually the same day, a lot of the outlets that were talking about how good it was to ban the book because of all the graphicness it has and all the violence and stuff, which you don't want the kids seeing, they were talking about how it's terrible that Hollywood is bowing to China by censoring the end of Fight Club, which Hollywood didn't actually do because when they sold the rights to the distribution movie company, that company, which is
Tencent
Chinese,
had
to
editing
edit
rights,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, they had to do it, obviously. But you could make the argument with the posters, like with Black Panther and some of the other movies and stuff like that. But it does all kind of work into the discussion here because it does bring up a lot of interesting tidbits that we eventually will talk about on this stream, possibly, because we did discuss some of them previously, like with the how would we go about some discussions. We don't want to wash or sugarcoat anything, but we also don't want to stun lock and scar little kids for life. So there are interesting ways of like which books do you have when, how do you talk about stuff in a more safe manner, or how do you talk about stuff at different times or different parts of the exhibit, being able to break it up and stuff, which
right,
is always
and to appropriately
discussion.
right to set an appropriate tone, because a lot of queer history and queer culture is this sort of joyous, flamboyant. That's a huge part of its outward presentation, at the very least. But then on the other hand, you have all the persecution historically and contemporarily. Or to put it another way, when you go to the Holocaust Memorial Museum, you know the tone you're going to get. It's very much what's on the tin. You know what you're getting. You're not going to the Holocaust Memorial Museum for a light, breezy, jaunt through, joyous Jewish culture. You're getting the Holocaust Memorial Museum. So with, the LGBTQ stuff, where do you thread that line exactly in terms of appropriately depicting, because they're inseparable, really. The flamboyance is a direct response to centuries of stifling. You can't really pull those apart. So I think threading that line, it's probably going to be very difficult.
And my camera is doing something weird today, and I don't know why. There we go. And that's actually also why I usually avoid using the Holocaust Museum. Like, I'll use the Holocaust Museum as a direct comparison from time to time, but usually my go-to is the African American Museum, because if you've been there, you see a lot of comparisons with, yes, they do talk about a lot of folk songs and more upbeat songs, but in doing so, you're not just going to get this washed like an old Disney movie. You have to talk about what led to those songs, which ultimately is not the best stuff. And I hate this camera. First thing I'm fixing when I get the new setup.
Well, it's a difficult contrast as well, because of course, famously, nothing bad has ever happened to African American people. So there's a huge range of for the stenographer, that was a joke. Thank you. Read that as sarcasm.
Yes.
Yeah, a wide range of experiences. I think that's probably a much more apt comparison. Of course, the Holocaust Memorial is about a specific, very bad thing, as opposed to like the broader history of a group.
Which is definitely, like you say, an exact specific point in time, which is something we have to tackle when considering the broadness of the topic we are bringing up here, which, it brings us all around. Obviously, we want to talk about, okay, in the beginning, when you first enter, it's been around forever. You do tidbits and references to other species, dinosaur times, cavemen, Romans, Greeks, Mesopotamians, all around. Like, it comes up everywhere. It's not just, this is something that happened at Stonewall and has been a thing ever since. This is something that's been here pretty much forever, with its various definitions and various ups and downs and various interesting points. And I'm trying to remember, because you mentioned something when you popped in on last stream. I wanted to go somewhere with it, but I'm trying to kind of remember where I was going with it. Let me see if I actually have it in my notes here, because this wasn't a very important topic, but I can't quite remember what you said.
Oh, we've got plenty of time for your memory to catch up with you. It's been a long time since we last spoke, by the way. How have the accommodations been? I know with COVID, I imagine what would already have been a slow process is grinded to an even slower start. But, past that, have things been well?
Yeah, for the most part, we've had to delay a lot of the stuff we wanted to do on the channel because, like you said, things start to grind a little bit, and most people don't have the free time to work on a lot of the writing for the videos. Unfortunately, most of the more historical focused videos or more definition focused videos on different terms and things take a lot more preparation, which
All right.
leads to difficulty with in terms of resources. Though we have been invited back to a number of events we wanted to do that post and pre-COVID, mostly just pride festivals and parades. But I was going to mention this later, but I guess I'll mention this now. If anyone in your chat is familiar with Awesomecon, it's kind of like, I like to refer to it as East Coast Comic Con. It's a big convention, largely in DC, though I do believe they do smaller ones throughout the year in other locations as well.
Mhm.
They've invited us to partner with them this year because they have a section called Pride Alley, which has a bunch of artists from the community. And they're gonna give us a big booth and set us down, and we'll bring a bunch of pronoun stickers and stuff that people can wear, and partner with them for advertising and donations and shirts and stuff like that. Try and help us branch out a little bit there.
That's
Other than that,
fantastic.
we also have the Discord.
I'd meant to ask, by the way. Obviously, there's very much a long-term, process of building hype. What is where is the initial endowment coming from? Like, or I should say, like, what are you working with to begin with in terms of construction?
So in terms of initial construction, we went to a couple different construction companies and talked with them about general ideas for just going over cost and building pathways based upon the design we have and the design we're working on, which we haven't showcased yet because we wanted to do that at an in-person event, but COVID.
Right, of course.
And it really mostly largely depends on where we do it, because everywhere that we look, they all have their own set of regulations and throughways, which involve either local constituents or larger constituents. For example, if we wanted to do it in DC, you can't really get you can't come forth with large direct partnership because it can blend into with a corporation, because it can blend into a cross point of interest trying to get EDU and stuff. And then largely you have to focus on getting government approval for build sites anyway in DC, because everything there is congressionally owned. But if we went somewhere else, it really just depends. I wasn't sure where you were going with the question with that. Did you mean financially, or what did you mean specifically?
Oh yeah, in terms of the initial investment made as well. I mean, is this I apologize if it came up earlier and I just forgot to ask, but is this from a government grant that is being put forward, or is there a private investor who's looking to construct, or is it an ongoing revenue generation scheme?
It's a mixture of ongoing and government. So there are a lot of government pathways that can lead to generations in forms of grants. We see all this with the African American Museum and the Bible Museum, for instance. But those usually come into forms of support. The government doesn't want stuff. They don't want to put money into something that isn't largely being looked at. We saw this obviously with Tesla, for instance. So right now we're kind of doing the whole public hype phase to build, so that way when we actually do go to the government and Congress and say, okay, here's the plan to build this, here's how much it's cost, here's what we need from you, here's what we have, this is we actually are presenting with some level of interest. Mostly right now what it started with was a lot of mostly just elders and people from the community who were kind of all over the place and there for a lot of events, like you saw with the first stream with Monica and Marshall and Millie and such.
Right.
Other just people who've been there and don't have a lot of necessarily capital to their name, but they have
for all intents and
purposes the history.
Right, of course.
Right. They are the history. So it was just a bunch of younger and older people trying to get together to record their history, initially in an online database, and eventually this is leading us to the hopeful event of working towards something a little bit bigger.
Yeah, of course. And there's probably plenty of time to go as well. I know these projects takes a while. They take a while to accrue, and with COVID, I know construction has slowed tremendously all over the country, not just to a shortage in and increased expense of materials, but also it's just harder to get people together. So it's a rough
Yeah.
time to be doing anything outside.
Oh, definitely. And there are definitely a lot of pathways we can take towards working with companies. I know there's the accusation from the community that a lot of companies just grift in terms of how they represent different minority groups when it comes to their months out of the year. We see this a lot with like companies that will put, I don't want to name names being on YouTube for obvious reasons,
Hmm.
but you'll see companies just slap the rainbow on their logo in some countries, but not others. Granted, it's a felony in those countries, so I can't always blame them, but it does say a little bit when they aren't directly saying something. There's definitely time to build up repertoire and get support from them, because some companies have shown interest in working with us from the perspective of they do genuinely want to give back to the community in some way. Most of them just are waiting to see where it goes, because obviously they want to know that this isn't going to burn out necessarily. The last
Right.
thing anyone wants to see is us to get partway into the project and either it's handled irresponsibly, which we're hoping that, obviously we won't happen. We're trying to be as responsible and open upfront as we can, or lack of interest, a lot of conflict, which is stuff generally I really talk about the conflict point with you.
Mhm.
Like with how if we talk about things in a certain way, there might be a little bit of conflict in the community. You see this with turf lesbians or
I
racist
do love
gay people.
conflict. Yeah, I think just an upfront guess. I do not think anything you do is going to appeal to the turf lesbians. I feel like a fairly unpleasable group. There is a lot of infighting. A lot of it I feel is fairly manufactured though. For example, like turfs represent a really small portion of the lesbian, or I guess like broader feminist community, but they get signal boosted massively by traditional conservative organizations, which would have, of course, their own oppositions to an LGBTQ museum anyway. Um, in terms of like internal discourse, like things, schisms along which you're going to have these problems, there are definitely like, points of contention. I don't know. Maybe my perspective on this is a little bit biased because I'm very, very familiar with the kind of infighting the queer community experiences. It's possible stuff like this happened with the African American History Museum too, right? There are probably elements of presentation, ways of framing certain elements of the Black American experience that some people. I know there's a huge divide between younger and older Black people in America in terms of like the civility politics. I know that comes up like really often in discussions. Um, I don't know how that would bear out in application in a museum or how that would lead their priorities, but in terms of queer community stuff, I feel like there's probably a way to keep most people mostly happy without exciting too much negative discourse.
No, definitely. I mean, a lot of like using again the African American Museum for example. There's definitely a divide between the popularity, and I use popularity as common knowledge in this case, and what people are visually looking for, knowledgeable about. For instance, the African American Museum project started back in, I believe, the late 70s, early 80s, somewhere around that time period. My brain with years is a little bit loose right now. And it didn't pick up ground until the mid 2000s, pre 2010, like probably 2006 to 8. And even then, nothing in terms of government grants or construction started until much later in the teens.
Hmm.
And part of the reason for that is definitely due to broader, larger awareness and support. I mean, as with anything, once it pops up and goes viral, people are usually a little bit more immediate to do something with it. And that's one of the reasons that we wanted to spend so much time in the darkness prior to doing this, trying to just figure out how exactly we're going to do that representation, because that's something we saw with them as well, where, like you said, there's a little bit of discourse between generations. You still see this even in the queer community. Marshall Shore talked about this last time with intersectionality on this is how older people might call something, this is how they might view something else. And then other things we have to be conscious about are future terms. And actually, I remembered what I want to talk to you about off the bat was, usually you talk a lot about gender abolitionism. You are a gender abolitionist. And if I'm understanding your perspective on it correctly, that means eventually you want to get to the point where it just, outside of maybe medical philosophy, it just doesn't matter. You walk in and it's not he, she, they, it is we, our. Start playing the USSR anthem there. But,
yeah, if you want to avoid infighting, I would strongly suggest you not have the gender abolitionism wing. Yeah, a bit more contentious of a position. I think that when I talk about gender abolitionism, I'm talking about social roles and expectations that are associated with sex. Of course, when we say a person, say, is assigned male at birth, there are a couple of physiological things that we can infer from that. Not always. There's variance even within, intersex people exist, and there are characteristics that, might be common to people who are assigned male at birth, but not ubiquitous, so on and so forth. But, broadly, we can infer some things. But the social ascriptions we then make, well, a person who's assigned male at birth must be more brave, or they must be this, they must be that, or even the assumption that they will be. That's what I tend to think of when I think of gender, and everything kind of builds out from that point. And I guess the ideal that I'd like to think of, is a world in which categories like race and sex exist only in their strict biological forms and are thus socially irrelevant. So, a person's sex would be, in terms of their personality, as relevant a characteristic as their hair color. A person's race would be literally the color of their skin. We wouldn't even have terms like white or black, because not only are those terms not really biologically useful for a variety of reasons, they tend to denote a meaningful distinction that isn't really present, and I think that the goal of this ideally would be that rather than the roles and attitudes that we're meant to adopt being prescribed in relation to our sex, there's no prescription at all, and you can just be whoever you'd like, and the sex is just sort of an incidental characteristic, no more important than, we consider eye color, hair color, or any other number of things that most people don't really care about that much when it comes to making prescriptive judgments.
See, I'm definitely very happy that we invite you on for these discussions, because that's the kind of clarification I'm looking for. Usually when you talk about it, I only hear the social part in the beginning, and I can never tell if you're talking broadly overall with everything or just the social. Like, I used to say that I was a social gender abolitionist. I'd like us to get to that point where, like you say, it doesn't necessarily matter, but we still can have certain titles and stuff just due to the fact of some people like to use certain pronouns and stuff like that. But it doesn't, in the long run, you go to a Kohl's and it's going to be pants, skirts, dresses, jackets, etc. And that's definitely something that we have to keep in mind with the museum, even if we don't have a wing about gender abolitionism, just to avoid the conflict and to avoid the craziness that comes with it. As we move forward and progress, especially with things like xenogenders, we're going to start running into a little bit less of that. Earlier today, I was in a trans group chat talking with a couple people from there, and they looked at a thing from, it was a questionnaire from like 1957 or something. And when they first posted it, someone said, wait, doesn't have to go in the not safe for work chat, because it was sex and how sex relates to you, like what your sex is. And they were using that term as we would use today prescribing for gender, but they were using it in like a sexual way. And if you read the title today, it sounded very promiscuous. And when you took the exam, you realized, oh, it's not, it's dumb, because it's like, most of the questions are, do you like to cook? Do you like to hunt? Do you like guns? Do you like to fight? Does baking a souffle for 3 hours sound appealing to you? And it towards the end of that, they would kind of notate where on the general spectrum you were. And on the one hand, it was a very progressive for the time, concept of, I'll say gender for the sake of today, because it actually had
right. You know, where do you
four
lean?
squares.
Yeah,
Like, it
kind of
wasn't
a
just male and female. It was male with, feminine tendencies, female with masculine tendencies. It covered what today we'd call non-binary, but it obviously didn't say that because this is the 50s. But it was
right.
very, it was a very progressive for the time. With I can never remember that one meme where it's just like their intentions are good, but you're incorrect kind of thing.
You're
Like their
right.
heart's
Well,
in the right place.
progressivism back in the 1950s was calling a lady a feisty dame rather than hysterical if she argued back against her husband.
Right.
Right, you know, we're dealing with a very lower, you know, very much lowered standard. But yeah, the sentiment, the sentiment we're dealing with there. I mean, this stuff is older than what we would call Western civilization, I guess. With variable or intemperate attitudes towards sex, gender, and sexuality. And for in early human history, you know, back when we were all hunter gatherers, social roles were heavily dictated by one's sex, not even out of social prescription, but out of the natural relationship humans had with the environment. You know, it's the same with any other animal, right? In the absence of a society or any broader social construction, dimorphic sexual expression usually exists to facilitate some sort of biological evolutionary purpose. But ever since we overcame that, you know, we don't hunt or gather anymore. Like these things don't happen anymore, right? Being physically
Right.
strong is essentially meaningless now in terms of how effective or productive you are day to day as a man or woman or anyone else, outside of being an athlete, a construction worker, a couple of niche professions. As long as you're healthy, strength isn't that useful.
Unless, of course, you're a fan of Encanto.
Oh, of course. Well, yes, of course, of course. You know, naturally, for the good cosplays, you're going to need to beef up a bit. No denying it. But it's our understandings of it, because obviously, like the retort from, you know, reactionary types tends to be, you know, well, biology, you know, men are men, women are women. But well, first of all, okay, we wear glasses, we wear shoes, so, you know, shut up. If we're deferring to biology here, then, you know, go wipe your ass with a leaf. Obviously, we've overcome this. You know, don't be dumb. Or in terms of pushback from like the you know, progressive types with gender abolitionism, I feel like a lot of them worry that the absence of gender will reduce people to their sex. I hear that one a lot, but I think it's kind of the opposite. I think that gender props up sex by proximity. That as long as gender is a construct we celebrate, whether in liberating or sort of toxic repressive ways, its adjacency to sex gives undue importance to characteristics that, I mean, how much of your day-to-day life is affected by your biological sex, right? Like probably not that much. Like I think my entire day up until this point would have been identical if I, you know, if I'd been born, you know, like a cis woman or something.
Granted, we never leave the house.
Right, of course, naturally, you know. Oh, I just mean in terms of what I could do. Like what am I doing? Like, you know, what did I want to do today? Like I don't think I
Right.
did like I don't think I had a man day. I think I just did stuff. I don't think it matters that much. And I don't think it should matter as a social prescription. If people want it to matter to them, then that should be an adoption of their choice, you know. Them building an identity of their own volition, not an identity they have to shape with social baggage forced onto them.
Right. No, I definitely get your point. It's more that's something that's we're constricting what is personal and what should be personal, as you see too
Mm.
often with like the Karens who say, "Oh, you're wearing the wrong outfit because my boys are starting to become men with the way they're looking at people," and it's the constriction of personal versus public. Maybe you should teach your boys to be more personal and shut up. Um, Let me move this mic. I'm still getting more accustomed.
I hear you just fine,
Before
by the
this,
way.
I was on podcasts, and I'm getting more accustomed to like what I do with my hands and stuff because now there's a camera here. It's not as podcasty.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
well,
the
I don't think your camera presence is bad at all. You sound good over the mic too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this mic was from when I did podcasts. I interned with a company back when I was in university, and they were, you know, upgrading their stuff, and they're like, hey, do you want this? And cool, it doesn't need to be upgraded. It's still good, so I took it. But no, just going off of that, like, then that definitely goes into a lot of how we as the museum should interact with the general public. Because you were talking a lot about these other groups, and especially if we went back to the TERF lesbians, for instance. Groups like that, very, very small number, very, very niche, tiny, but big media presence. They get popped up. Once it's out there, it's kind of strong. And that's something we definitely have to be cognizant of, where it's like, we know they're small, but when we build this in the corner, if there are 100 people, you know, coming onto the channel and commenting and talking and ratioing it on Twitter, what demographic is that 100 coming from? Like 100, like 80 TERF lesbians might be all of them. That's not a lot, but as we saw with what was that one group? Did you hear about it was Moms for Something?
Moms always are standing for something, and so often it's for something terrible when they make an org with that name, you know.
Someone in one of our chats will know what this was. This was it was like Moms against gays, or it was something, and it turned out to be like one mom. It turned out to be one person, but she made a website and it was called like 1 million moms or something.
Of course.
And she made a bunch of posts on this website that was called 1 million moms, and it was supposed to be like a whole group of 1 million moms lobbying for this thing, and it actually caused major corporations and even towns to change their actions. And then like a year later, it turned out to just be one person. And I can't for the life of me, this was a few years ago, I can't for the life of me remember what exactly she was lobbying against. I just know the page was like called 1 million moms for something.
Yeah. Well,
Someone
it's so often it's not about influence, right? It's about perceived influence. And people are really willing to buy into the idea that TERFs have legitimate concerns, even though they never really name what those concerns are. You know, it's always concerns, but like, what concerns? We one day we'll find out, I'm sure. It's the same old hackneyed points as well. You know, like, well, women aren't safe in their bathrooms. Can you supply evidence? And of course they can't. You know, ad infinitum. Really, these things are problems mostly because conservative media loves to signal boost these. You know, these organizational efforts, because all you need is like the BBC article that got put out recently, that awful, scandalous, you know, monstrously negligent piece of pseudo journalism. All you really need to do is manufacture the narrative. And hey, if if what you have is evidence in the form of an 88 respondent Facebook poll taken from a Facebook group that was already against trans people, like, well, there's your evidence, you know.
Yeah, no, that was a mess. And we had the same thing happen in Hurd, and because I'm from Virginia, I recently moved to Ohio. I'm still in the process of actually getting there.
Mm-hmm.
But in Hurd in Virginia a couple months ago, there was a high school where some girl was raped in the bathroom. Very, very terrible stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended up not doing anything with the boy, and the boy went to a different school, and he tried to do it to another girl in the classroom. But the parents from the first school showed up and they said, hey, this boy is a trans girl. He was wearing a skirt. He used this to get into the girl's bathroom and get closer to our daughter. And he used this school's law on we will not discriminate against trans people to do this. Well, two things. One, the law hadn't even been passed yet. It wasn't passed for another month. Keep in mind, that's already 3 months after the event. Two, the boy was cis and straight and a football player and not wearing a skirt at all. No evidence. And three, like, it doesn't matter. It's still illegal. Like, the biggest argument, like, they're going to spend all this time transitioning you to do that. No one is taking erectile dysfunction medication for 2 years just to change their gender card just so they can do something that's illegal anyway.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter because they ran with the notation that, oh, trans girl uses a law which hasn't been passed yet to cause harm.
Would it surprise you to hear that we've had to talk about this on stream several times in response to conservative fear-mongering?
No, not at all. Because I mean, the same thing happened today with Candace Owens talking about the Paris Minnie Mouse pantsuit while wearing a pantsuit on Fox News. She was interviewed because Tucker Carlson had just finished with the M&Ms, and someone else came on and brought Candace Owens on to interview her because in France, in honor of Women's History Month, they're going to be doing Disney's doing a big event there, and they brought some designer to come in, and the designer
Right. It's literally they drew the mouse in a different
in
pants.
A suit,
yeah,
in pants instead of a dress, and they were going on about how this is going to destroy the women way of life, and women can't survive through this, and it will be fortunate that this probably isn't permanent. And Candace Owens was saying all this while wearing a pantsuit. So it's stuff like that we have to work against. And most of like our biggest thing with the museum is being open to working with schools and education groups and anyone who like wants to come. We want to have that level of knowledge progression in the museum, so it's not immediately thrusting you into the deep end, because there's a lot of people caught in the middle. There are a lot of parents that I've talked to who they'll email us and they'll message us and they'll go, well, we have kids and we don't want to like add to the statistic of just kicking them out, but we're genuinely curious. We have no idea. And I'll usually point them to some resources that help them learn a little bit more, because it's definitely difficult as a kid to talk to your parents about that stuff. And I'll point them to ways that they can keep their life, because a lot of them, you know, if they're religious, well, there are churches that are less terrible than other churches, and there are, you know, different places you can go and stuff. And it's definitely a mixture between how much we defend against the fear mongering and then how much we play cadence and cadence to the people who come, who've been a part of this for decades and just want to read the full history, because we don't want to, if we scare off both sides, if we don't have that balance, then we're ultimately not going to get anywhere. Especially now, trying to like get off, we're going to get, you know, ratioed on our websites and stuff, which has actually happened. Our website still isn't back up. For everyone asking in the chat, people are asking in my personal Discord, not even just the museum Discord, about when the website's coming back, and we keep working on getting it up, but like we're trying to get the original domain back, because it went up early on when we first wanted to go public, and someone from the community who didn't like, you know, one group of people, it was that infighting that rarely happens.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, I think it's going to be, if my experience observing online conflict in left-leaning communities has led me to any truth, it is that it is incredibly difficult to find trustworthy and reliable people for any kind of project management, or really anything, just for literally anything. You know, some of these people, you couldn't trust them to build a gingerbread house, let alone a museum. Where
I mean, no, seriously, because like, just for one thing, because I do want to say this for your chat specifically, like, we're not the first group to do this. We always get asked that all the time. We'll get like people who are heavily involved in the queer community will ask us, do you know so and so? Like, because there was a group before us that tried to do the museum, and it completely fell apart, because one, it was horribly mismanaged, and two, it was only specifically focused on, I think, like the gay white male suburban. You remember like during the AIDS epidemic how it involved everyone, and then once the government went, oh, we're actually gonna like research this because it's affecting cis dudes, the gay white middle class kind of separated themselves from the rest of the queer community for a little bit and ran with like everyone else at the norm.
It's been known to happen. Yeah. It's been known to happen. Those cis white gay guys, they have been known to be flighty. I lived next to West Hollywood for most of my life. There's definitely a stereotype in some gay communities about other types of gay communities, and their willingness to burn bridges, you know, and leave other people holding the fire, so to speak.
I don't want to sound bad or anything. I just want to clarify for that, because I know I'm going to get ostracized by people who know.
Oh no, they are not in any way responsible for the shit I say. Okay, and by the way, disagreeing with me on these matters is homophobic, because I like men, and these are my opinions with decades of experience living next to West Hollywood. Okay, just
I meant more from the racism perspective, because like, well, people who know me specifically will know that I pass better than Hassan, but we're from the same place, so I want to clarify for those people.
Oh,
I
I didn't
got
know
the
that.
weird gene in my family. I'm the only person who looks like this. My Jitto say he's gonna disown me.
Well, it's fine, I'm Polish. We're all shades of non-white. The real solution to racism is to just incrementally reduce the spectrum of who fits into the white label until there's like one guy in Scandinavia, and he's the only remaining one. You know what I mean? Like eventually, like all the Anglos will be Anglo cucks, and the French and the Spanish will all be various forms of swarthy. It just somewhere up north, there's a guy in a log cabin, and Svensk, and he's the one white guy left. And he has all the white supremacy power, and everyone else just gets to chill.
I always find that interesting. Every time I see a meme where it's like anti the LGBT due to the complexity of it all. Like I saw something the other day where it was the random bullshit go meme from like Moon Knight from the comic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the top panel was LGBT people, don't make fun of this, that, and the other thing. It's be who you are, but don't like come out with all this crazy corporate shill stuff, of all the rainbow things. And then the next comment was random bullshit go, followed by a bunch of like the more lesser known flags, like pan, omniqueer, the stuff like you wouldn't walk into a church in here because to them gay is the main term,
right?
And the thing that I always get from that is like it definitely on the surface does seem like it's more segregating, but it's not, because at the end of the day, well, we all understand everyone has the different identification. We're more understanding of each other and we're more inclusive. And the opposition I always see to this is like with the census, for instance. They don't have another. They keep limiting the census in the U.S. as to the number of things on there and like grouping stuff together. Like they grouped Middle Eastern as a whole with white and Caucasian a while back.
Right.
So on the U.S. Census, it's just white. Yet we're constantly at war there, and there's such a big problem of racism. But if you look on the sheet, you're literally listed as the same thing. So I always find it funny where it's the common argument is the more labels you have, the more segregated you are. But that's just not true.
And with Hispanic as well, because if you're Hispanic, that you're under white, and then you just check the Hispanic ethnicity thing. It's a really weird thing in the census.
Why do we even add ethnicity?
They only do it for Hispanic people too. I wonder if it's a way of artificially boosting the percentage of white people in this country because people were worried about that not look. You could get at that from either way. I'm not sure what the motivation was there, but having one ethnicity check and it exclusively being for Hispanic people seems a bit weird, or at least inconsistent,
I know someone from chat's going to fact check me on this, but I'm not going to say the date, but definitely a few years ago, there was a huge thing on Fox News going around where it was like, America is getting less and less white, and by 2025, we're all going to be speaking Spanish instead. And there was this huge push against, because it like became the standard curriculum in high school. Everyone took Spanish. Mm-hmm. I mean, I took Spanish for a little bit, then I switched over to like French and German, but it was this huge propagandist concern that was a thing. And you see it all the time, like you were talking about earlier with the whole why the government doesn't just send you a tax check like they used to, and now it just causes problems because we don't teach people that in school. I don't know how taxes work.
But, well, no, nobody does. The people who write the tax laws don't know how taxes work.
No,
okay, it's
just they don't.
A big goof, the great replacement white nationalist rhetoric has definitely been ramping up lately, which is great, So that'll be fun to deal with. Can I, in terms of reliable help for the museum, can I make a suggestion? This is the distillation of all the wisdom I have ever accrued, in terms of anything relating to project management and left-leaning people. You already said yes, sure, so I don't know why I paused there. So my suggestion is this. You need to have a 50-50 balance between ideologues and completely politically undifferentiated people who just like doing a good job because they're fastidious. The issue is that so many people on the left are so opinionated, and especially when you have identity-based stuff like trans, gay, pansexual, whatever, a lot of these people, their opinions on these subjects aren't just their opinions, it's like their lives. And there's nothing wrong with that. That passion is necessary to build a good system. It's necessary to understand, but it also gets in the way of impartial analysis. And it does mean that even slight disagreements can turn into schism creating, foundation ruining, drama whirlpools. So I think you need to temper those people with like middlemen. You need people who like honestly get like Bob from accounting, like a really good Bob, and it can be like
Yeah.
50-50. You have your people who like discovered they were trans at 6 years old and like wear a 3-piece suit in the trans flag colors, and then you have Bob from accounting. Bob doesn't know what a xenogender is. Bob knows how to run numbers and is really, really good at talking to contractors. I swear to God, if you just get a few of those people, like not like bigots or whatever. I mean, obviously, like they're good with the project and everything, but like their role is just doing a good job. It makes such a difference. People who are selected purely based on that.
I definitely understand that because we've definitely used a lot of that. Like when we went to make the bot for the Discord. Shout out to our friends up in Canada on TV. I have to do this. I'm almost contractually obligated. Queer Veneer. That's a TV show up in Canada, and they have a bunch of little like mascotty characters, and one of them's called Qbot, and they're partnering with us. They're letting us use their bot as the bot for Discord. So we have a custom bot on there called Qbot. It's very adorable. But we went to a person and we contracted. We said, hey, we're going to pay you, this, run the server, set up the bot, do all the stuff for us. That way you can join and click a button and have access to the channels and things. And that way you're not overridden. Because if you were to look at it from an admin perspective, I'm sure you went to the Discord and you clicked like what flags apply to you. Did you see channels for each of those flags where you could click it and it would have like sections to talk about it?
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I didn't click any of the flags. I marched in with the assumed,
I don't know who did.
The assumed arrogance of a live streamer entering a Discord channel to call people.
No, definitely understand. But like, there's a thing there where you can do that. You can go into self roles and click like gay, and then you'll see a new discussion board where it goes gay, and it goes history, contention, knowledge if you want to have about it, like 5 different things to talk. We have that times 23 in there.
Yeah,
because
the system.
We have 23 flags we're tracking. So if you're an admin, you scroll for days in the Discord. So we went to them, we're like, look, we don't want everyone joining this Discord and scrolling for days because if you click 3 flags, you already then have 15 different things to talk in, and that's enough. So, and he didn't know the first thing about any of this. Like he knew like obviously that there are people who are gay and what gay meant, like different, but he was from a country where they didn't even have like pronouns, they didn't gender chairs like we do. So, or ships or stuff. So to them, it was like, everything was just they. So we're talking about like trans, non-binary. He kept asking me, what does this flag mean? What does this flag mean? Like I was showing the colors and I was educating him as best I could. And it's not that he didn't care, but it's that he really didn't care in the perspective of, okay, cool.
Right.
This is awesome.
This is essentially the business equivalent of how every like solid college gay group just has one large white cis guy. They can be gay or whatever, but they have to be like the big white cis guy, and they're the one who calls the pizza place. If there's
unfortunately,
problems,
I think this guy was like 5'2".
Oh well, I got to be that guy. But height only metaphorically important here. For the construction, but all I'm saying is that when everyone's an ideologue and everyone has strong opinions on everything, there's nothing more inviting than the warmly Midwestern accent of some guy with like 2 first names saying, well, I don't know what a transgender is, but I can tell you're being fleeced by these contractors. Let me go and talk to them and make sure they take a couple of zeros off of that budget, off that bill, okay?
Honestly,
that is an immeasurably essential element of any project management.
We worked. No, you don't know how right you are, because we worked with someone, and it was like they were the dude from I can never remember his name, but he's like that cowboy actor. He's got that big mustache. He keeps aging backwards. I think he became the new mayor on Family Guy, like actually himself after Adam West died. But it's this cowboy guy, and he was in some TV show after 70 show went off the air. And we had a guy like that, exactly like that. He thought Brokeback Mountain was he didn't get the gay memo in that somehow. I don't know how.
Wait, what? Wait, did
And
he not?
no, he didn't. Well, he
Okay.
did like I don't know, and he just didn't care. He's like, oh, they're buddies. Who cares?
What
And
good
they're doing
friends.
bro stuff.
What a heartwarming tale of friendship between two men.
He literally said that to us. He went, oh yeah, no, if you haven't kissed your homie goodnight, are you really friends? And we went, oh, okay, cool. Like
Yeah,
unironically, the meme.
yeah, no,
Unironically.
it's in a weird way. It's almost like a wraparound progressive kind of not really, but like a little bit. You know, people normally do this with women. You know, historical
Yeah.
figures. They'll be like, you know, the Countess Elizabethia, who never married and never had children and spent all her time with her chambermaid, and they died together and were buried together. And historians were like, oh my god, girl besties. Oh my god,
Yeah.
roomies. You know,
Well, no,
so.
like he knew what gay people were. He didn't pick up on it because he himself wasn't very like romantic anyway. So he was just like they're just being good, good friends to each other. But like he helped us out with a lot of the numbers and going over because initially we were talking about where in Northern Virginia or Maryland, if you're going to put it there, and he was doing the tax comparison between the two states because they have different. Maryland, like every corporation keeps putting their stuff in Maryland because it has virtually no tax laws, and he was just going over the back and forth stuff with us. So I definitely get what you're saying. Like outside of the people, and even in the people who like break down how we separate the flags. Like we gave it to two people on the board, the council, and they went, okay, here's a bunch of flags. We don't know what all 23 of these are, but we know like which ones are gender based, which ones are sexuality based, which ones are middle ground, and they kind of just helped us how to divide them. And one thing I noticed as a sociologist was there were a lot of things that they were assisting us with that if they were too aligned with any one of the flags they might have missed because they might have like overemphasized the similarity between two, or they might have misconnected gray areas and stuff. And we came up with a really good layout for the inside of the museum, a really good design point.
Mhm.
We're probably going to launch a preview of the design at Awesomecon in June for, again, anyone on that coast who knows what Awesomecon is. I know that's the opposite of you, but it's soon to be the
No,
opposite of me, but I have to
I'm
drive.
absolutely familiar with Awesomecon. I've definitely heard of it. No, yeah, it's first of all, I'd highly encourage anyone going to Awesomecon to drop by the booth. Obviously, don't even need me to say that, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's always going to be a diversity of perspectives kind of thing. My time in the online left has been fraught with some disagreement. You know, I think that's a fairly common experience. I just think it's really difficult to build a cohesive vision which takes into account the desires of everyone, um, unless you're willing to have a sort of authoritative, not author. A museum can never really be an authoritative entity, I think, because it's always subservient to the information it wants to present, or at least it shouldn't be authoritative. But
Right.
right,
I mean, you can definitely wash to a good degree the information you want to present, as we've seen with some of the museums we're unfortunately in conflict with, where they'll talk about people, but then they won't talk about everything about that person because they'll be like just them from the working perspective, no private life for that one specifically. And of course, we know why. That's what we want to try and move past.
Right. Of course, yeah, you know, or you have there are so many male historical figures, where usually these are like savants or like, I mean, let's be real, like autistic people before we knew autism was real, and a lot of them were very obviously gay, and it very rarely gets discussed, so it'll just be like, oh, they were asexual, they had no interest in sex, and that like I remember reading up on this at least one specific instance where there's a historical figure broadly thought of as like being ace, just not interested in people, you know? This is back in the 1800s or whatever. But like if you read even a little bit into them, they obviously had multiple male lovers, you know. But then you just don't talk about it, you know. If it is discussed, it's painted over, and if not painted over, it's not even addressed at all. So obviously
That's
that's not good. I don't
that's
like that.
definitely one. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was at the end there.
Okay. No, I just want to. I was going to add on to that. That's definitely one of the open points for discussion. And I don't mean discussion against it. I mean discussion in ways to like present it, because there are certain topics like that where we don't want to just go out and say straight like, oh, this person was gay. We want to talk about um, the differences between like romantic attraction and sexual attraction, because you can tell based on letters and get into the little nuances and stuff. I just wanted to add that extra thing because I knew someone was going to ask me, if they went into the Discord and look, they'll see, okay, well, under, let's say, gay, for instance, you have down here, it goes safe space for obvious purposes, definition, again, obvious purposes, current events for media news, Fox and Friends, you get the idea. History, debate, and questioning. Questioning's pretty obvious. History's pretty obvious. Debate, less so obvious, especially for some of the mainstream ones like gay and lesbian, that you can't really debate those in the way you could debate, let's say, xenogenders. Not that you could debate a xenogender in terms of existence, but they're definitely getting into a little bit of a presentation discussion as you progress into it a little bit. So that being out there, and just what the debate along for some of that stuff is, and for all of them really, is more so how we go about presenting some aspects
Yeah, and you're
of history.
always going to be in very rocky territory there. That's just one of the issues with discussing anything that is so essentially a component of people's identities. There are people for whom the slightest disagreements are like ride or die. There's my way or the highway. Like there's no room for disagreement essentially,
That
which definitely makes it difficult to navigate these discussions.
that actually leads us into some conflict discussions that I definitely was interested in getting your perspective on. Two things here. I'll just deal with the straight conflict. Like, you'll have things where we talk about uh, different arguments from, and this is again mostly theoretical stuff. This isn't stuff that we're gonna, you might have two good bits, but we're not gonna solve it tonight because there's no really solving it. But you talk about people using pronouns in their Twitter. Obviously, you can't really make a bad argument against that. I've seen people saying like, oh, you're just having pronouns in your bio for clout because you want to be seen as a good ally, but in reality, everyone having pronouns in their Twitter bio kind of like destigmatizes it. So you're like, eventually we'll get to the point where you look at it and go, oh, that's just their pronouns. Like, they're not necessarily a part of their community, because I've literally seen conservatives who have pronouns in their bios just because they know, like, they understand the meaning behind it. And maybe they look androgynous, maybe they have like a weird furry or an M&M as their profile pic, who knows. But I've definitely seen the argument from people who come out saying like, oh, we don't want like them having it because it takes away from this, and some people make the argument it should. And there are ways to go about talking about that. And then obviously you have the other side where it's like, some people might transition and detransition for any number of reasons, and that's not your business. But you're always going to have the conservatives coming out and saying, oh, they just did it for clout in the first place. Or even people on the left might come out and say that if it's for a very particularly shorter period of time, and it's someone who is a higher worth person. And there are many ways we've discussed handling things like that, just because that second one in particular can present a very rocky slope from defending certain people, depending on if it really is for clout versus not. But obviously we all can agree that you don't want to ride the hype assumption train of once someone starts doing it because they're either doing it too late in life or they don't fit some kind of like peripheral perfectionism. Like, we're not Jedi here. We're not going to say they're too old to wield a glow stick.
I want to be forthcoming on this. Well, actually, let me ask you. So, I don't think there's any such thing as an apolitical presentation of information. Museums historically have generally been made for a reason. Sometimes they're made to showcase all the cool stuff that rich people have, and it's a private exhibition. Sometimes a government puts this stuff out there because they just killed a bunch of black people and they found some cool like rock carvings that they want to show off, or like metalworking. British Museum, the world's largest crime scene, so on and so on. But there's usually a reason. And with regards to this museum, what do you imagine the message is supposed to be? Do you want to just neutrally present the history of queer people in America? Are you interested in a kind of performative expression of power. Essentially, we've always been here. We're more prominent than ever before. This is what we are. This is what we have. This is what we've done. Not to say that it would have to be confrontational, but there's definitely something very authoritative about having a museum, dedicated to your presence. It's a form of legitimacy that, was historically denied many groups. The fact that they can exist now is a testament to the fact that queer acceptance has come a long way. I'm curious about what your intentions are, because depending on what they are or where you would weigh your relative preferences, I feel like some of these issues that we're talking about here probably shouldn't be touched on at all. For example, like xenogender discourse, pronouns in bio, these are modern culture war issues. It doesn't mean they're not important. They obviously touch on real, meaningful things that people talk and think about, but there are also things that are currently getting airtime on the news. I mean, it's something that people currently argue over, and it feels like, to me, it would be the equivalent of, trying to think of an example of this. To me, it feels like it would almost be the equivalent of going to the African American History Museum and seeing the Lil Nas X section and Twitter beefs between Lil Nas X and homophobic rappers, and whether or not he's rap or country with Old Town Road or whatever. Not to say these aren't important questions in terms of sort of determining the path of the river, what people are concerned about, but by the time that stuff gets put up in the museum, it's almost going to be made irrelevant by circumstance. So what is the attitude with which you want to present this? Do you know what I mean? I know I'm rambling.
No, I definitely know what you mean. And the last thing I want to do is give some kind of pre-prepared council statement of, we're this as an organization. Obviously, me being the person who interviews most people or talks, Marshall and I are kind of now the face of the project. So I definitely want to give you my opinion as well. And obviously we can discuss this in the future. I might ask Marshall the same question. I'd say there's nothing neutral about it. Everything that ever happens is political. Even if we were to come up here and from the baseline as neutral as possible, say this happened, just presenting that information, you're never going to do it in a neutral way. You're always going to do it in either a positive or a negative, and the majority will understand what you're saying. Unless you have a sign that literally just says someone ate this apple, and even then you can just discuss inflictions and get into the whole Sherlock Holmes territory of writing, but people are going to read that with their pre-bias or their predisposition anyway.
The decision to even include that information at all, right? Every success, every failure, chronologued is an expression of bias. There's an infinite amount of information to present on any subject. What you cut out or what you leave in, says as much about the world as it does about you.
For the majority purpose, just of the museum, 95%, 80%, the main chunk, it is the good progressive acknowledgement of things existing in the past. The common argument that this happened at Stonewall. No, this has existed since the dawn of time. Kind of the Horton hears a who, we are here. We're here, we're good, there's nothing wrong with it, this exists. You may not like it, you may not agree with it, but accept it. It's trying to put the good spin. It's good. It's left leaning. It's positive. And I don't like using left leaning as a political term to describe goodness necessarily, because that's not a correct thing to do. But I'm having a little bit of trouble just describing the point of the museum outside of a right or wrong perspective, because I obviously believe it's right. And even as an unbiased sociologist as I am, I went to school to be able to go, I don't have an opinion. I can explain the reasoning behind either side. This is one of the things I do have a few things I do have a strong opinion about.
Yeah, we can definitely say that historically left-leaning people have had the better opinions on gay and trans people.
No, we definitely.
Yeah.
To answer the second question, the reason, and this is one of the reasons earlier I was saying, even when we touch upon things the reason we have to keep things like gender abolition in mind is the museum is a history museum. culture and history, everything has to be thought from a present or past tense, depending on where it lies. Most things past tense. Even when we talk about things like pronouns in the bio or people transitioning and detransitioning for various reasons and discussing what those various reasons could be, though we don't want to nitpick into people's personal lives, because that's, again, one of the reasons I kind of left the spotlight before joining the museum project. Like, it's the whole, I don't agree with how that's handled oftentimes. That was more so for two things. One, for the internet presence, because we do have a website, we do have a Facebook. Eventually, we'll have a Twitter. Like, we'll have interns running social medias. We will have some level of presence, and we're already at the point in society where like corporations are considered people, to the lack of privacy concern. You know, the whole thing that like you look at a corporation and see like, I want Wendy's Twitter to roast me with a big foot. Like, it happens. The second reason was, I would have to slightly disagree with you on some of what you said, specifically, like, as little concern or relevance as I think the pronouns in the bio is. I don't think it's necessarily an apt comparison to Little Nas in the way you made it. I might be misunderstanding it, though. What I mean by this is, we would put it, even if we put it in the museum in a past tense perspective for modern culture, because we know it's largely going to be done by the time it's over, which I don't necessarily think it's going to totally be. It's still necessarily an importance, because it's talking about like, this is the perspective of something largely being accepted overall. Like, you'll see trans people. Trans people, they have an identification, they come out, they have their gender, their pronouns, their name. They're going to change it on their birth certificate, they're going to change it on their cards, we're going to call them how it is. And yeah, this should be the norm for everyone. You shouldn't just assume, go up and say like, if someone corrects you, because this happens with cis people. You see it all the time, where a woman who has a little too much testosterone, she could be conceived a little bit more manly, gets arrested going into a bathroom and kicked out of a bar in Texas or somewhere. It happens all the time, and it's something that like can largely affect everyone and branch out. So saying like, okay, here is something in a room where we talk about the conceived notation of gender and how, you know, everyone has their identity. It's something that is currently relevant, and I think will be relevant for a long time. And since everyone, like, no one goes anywhere without their phone, most of our friends are different countries online, everyone's going to be dealing with that online presence in a way that is relevant a little bit to how it's handled. And like you said earlier, with the going into the next thing, I know I'm kind of going all over the place here, but the third thing you said with like political spectrum. We are a political organization, like it or not. I may not like it. People on the team may not like it. Interns might not like it. Doesn't matter. We are, like it or not, we are a political spectrum, and we have to uphold our ideals, because there are two sides of the political coin. There's the people who you talked to the other day who identified as a conservative, and they were largely a economical conservative. They talked from the perspective of what actually is technically a matter of opinion. They went, sociologically, gay, trans, don't care. If you're a good person, I'll still be friends. That largely fights the overall notation of conservatism. But that's why I often talk about it from two perspectives, because weirdly enough, I met, like, I was back when I was in university, my last year of university, Trump's end of his reign before January 6th, before I actually went back to Virginia, because I was there watching your stream. I was outside of the hotel. You were on the phone with one of your friends who was in DC in a hotel. I was outside of their hotel listening to them talk through your stream. It was really weird. Very very parasocial. It was very interesting. But when I was still in university,
weird to get reminders of stuff like that, you know?
Oh, especially with that vigil. That was a interesting experience. But there was a group in Pennsylvania at my university. A guy came in to speak and to pick up another girl. He was a gay, very hyper femme.
Many such cases.
And she was he was non-binary gay immigrant. She was second generation Latino, bisexual. Like, they were about as queer as you could get, like wearing rainbows. They were whatever you think of the stereotype of a Catholic missionary taking you to play football and trying to be a cool kid is from, like, you know, Bible school days. imagine the queer equivalent. And they were planning parades and what's it called? The thing you're always talking about doing where you go around like houses to try and like get an official elected.
Hey, canvassing.
Canvassing, yeah. Like they were planning canvassing, they were planning marches, they were planning dinners prior to Trump's election for Trump. And like they went over, they were the dorm up for me. They went over and they had it on the TV. They had like full deck out Trump this, Trump that. They were about as sociologically queer as you can get. Like they fundamentally loved the idea of the museum. They wanted to help everything out with the museum. So the only reason I bring up stuff like that is I think it's definitely important. Well, on the surface, obviously, we are left leaning for obvious reasons. It's definitely important to address some of those, mostly from the perspective of we always want to extend the better hand. Like we always want
to talk about what people are talking about.
Right.
It's not just an anthropological exploration. It's a participation in modern discourse. No, I understand. I don't know if there's any approach you can take that will rid the world of the mind-boggling existence of the queer for Trump crowd. You know, God bless them and everything. I will say this though, if I may, because I have a suggestion as to how to do that. I turn to my inspiration on this towards, of course, cannibalism. Have you ever heard of the Museum of Cannibalism?
Yes.
Well, it's a fun ride. It's not actually a ride; it's just a museum. But there's an interesting bit towards the end that I think is actually really instructive for something like this, because when you're dealing with issues like well, what is gender? What is sex even? Because people don't seem to know. I've never heard a conservative effectively counter this. What actually makes a biological woman, quote unquote? They'll never be able to get me on this one because they don't read their American scientific journals. But even if they did, I mean, it's a spectrum, right? It's bimodal, right, not binary. So really, really difficult to get a hold on things like that. But the best way to pose the question, give the implied answer, but minimize the potential for backlash or social media ratioing, is to know how to frame the question to begin with. So the Museum of Cannibalism posed the question at its end. What is cannibalism? And it seems like it's an easy answer because, you've been walking through the museum and you're getting all these harrowing stories of, Antarctic explorers having to eat their own legs to survive the winter after getting trapped by a blizzard. Yeah, crap like that, right? So what is cannibalism? Well, this, obviously. Well, and you get your litany of examples, right? Well, what about oral sex? Well, obviously that's not, what about skin cells? Okay, well, that's not, well, what about this? What about that? And I don't remember all the details,
biting fingernails.
Yeah, biting fingernails, right? Some people, names retracted, have had a compulsive habit of, fucking chewing on their mustache hairs from time to time. It's just a thing people do a little bit. There's an ambiguity there. And if you're going by, well, that's not the bad kind of cannibalism, well, that would imply that it's the good kind of cannibalism, which would mean that it's cannibalism. The ambiguity that it sows at the end is really, really brilliant. Of course, they do a better job with their crafted museum piece than I can now, working off of memory.
In 20 minutes on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. But they did a great job. So, like, with sex, there's a huge difference in terms of your capacity to change minds between saying, there's no real such thing as a biological woman and asking what a woman really is. There's a huge difference between, saying, oh, actually, there are an infinite number of genders. It's totally arbitrary. And saying there's no objective way of describing how many genders there are or can be. Or asking people, well, where do you draw these lines? How do you know?
Or even probably a better way of describing it, just like if you're meeting someone out front and you're trying to have that first step discussion, there's no way to arbitrarily or objectively prescribe a definition to gender norms in actions. Because if they try, they're just going to be going back to like women in the kitchen, men in the wood shop. Like there's no way to objectively prescribe what different genders are necessarily better at, unless of course you're talking about Captain America and him actually pulling a helicopter, which I learned recently he did, and that baffles my mind.
Right. Well, the Captain America feats aside, the ambiguity is essential because so many people have essentialist perspectives on this. They think that things are the way they are, in an inviolate, like inarguable way. And the best way to break that down is to force them to admit they don't have an answer to these questions. So the big suggestion that I would have is simply that. If there's a controversial issue that you want to weigh in on, I think the best way to do that is by not actually weighing in on it, but you can ask questions pertaining to it in a way which clearly denotes your implied answer.
Right. No.
You break that down, and if people leave the queer museum, whatever, not knowing what it means to be gay, lesbian, a man, a woman, trans, or cis, I'd say that's always going to be a win for the progressives. The ambiguity only functions to help marginalize people, because essentialism is the vehicle for oppression historically in almost all cases.
That's definitely a valid point, and that's definitely something. One of the reasons I'd mention it, though I was tackling it from the other perspective of like the two sides of the coin, right and left. But even in our own side, like a lot of people on the left seem to forget that not everyone is some halfway through college dropout or graduate or struggling college student who knows their trade and knows everything. Like you and I have sociology degrees, which are very fortunate. You're infinitely more knowledgeable than I am due to experience, but not everyone. People seem to forget that. Like everyone starts somewhere, and you were talking about this in a previous stream, and I was talking about this at a conference I was at once, where it's like it's okay to break something down to its basic tidbits at the end of the day for an introductory discussion. Because you're going to have you'll have three types of people who enter the museum. The first type will be someone who they know exactly what they are, what their flags are, the detail they've known forever. They're going to go straight to that hall because they want to get the gory, in-depth history of that flag. People like them who did great things in the world, the woman on Jeopardy, whatever. Then you're going to have the other two people. They don't know anything. One of them is a hatchling. They just hatched. They have a kind of idea. They think, well, I might be gay, but they're concerned. They're scared. They're worried. They've grown their whole life watching Fox News, living with that family. They don't know how people are going to take it. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it wrong? Is it a sin? They don't know. And they're going to come in, and those are the type of people who they're already questioning. You want to push that boundary a little bit more, while also giving them a little bit of education on what it actually means to kind of like tidy up the cobwebs a little bit. Because as you see with, let's say, instead of bringing a friend, they're fortunate enough to bring a parent. Parent decides, I don't want to immediately kick them out, ostracize them. I mean, we hide Uncle Joe and he's not allowed to go to the high school. Why should we hide my son from Thanksgiving? So they go with them and they take their high schooler, and they're learning too. They're learning, well, I was raised thinking this, that, and the other thing. I was taught this, but that's not necessarily true. I'm learning that like it's not as bad as it is. They're not all tall, and this is if I talk any further, I'm going to get into African American analogies, because when I was at a conference helping with them before, while they were still constructing it, this was one of the things that they were primarily talking about, was like, we also want to advocate, because you're advocating the community. At the end of the day, you are advocating your community for everyone, and the best way to accomplish that goal is by normalizing it for all sides, which unfortunately includes people from the other side of the aisle or from the middle ground, because there are a lot of people in the middle ground who might have an inherent fear. They might see this town and think it's all a bunch of like 2006 Hot Topic when it looked like a graveyard goth kids who
Those
are
are the days.
smoking weed in front of in a pentagram bowl, and that terrifies them. I'm being facetious a little bit. Granted, I do wish
only
Hot
a
Topic
little.
looked cool though. But
No.
You know what I mean.
No, I completely agree. You're always speaking to a broad audience, and I do feel like, especially when I'm in the online left and not talking to people IRL, I get the impression that a lot of like activists you know, and the online left would spontaneously combust if they talked to their average American, you know? Not even like some rampaging bigot or whatever, just like a regular guy, you know?
Because you have the good faith argument. A lot of people on the left forget what the good faith argument is. I mean, if a college guy went to a grade school or a secondary school, and they're in the American, sorry, high school, and they listen to a kid go, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and they're sitting there, hold on a sec, let me put on
Gays
my
do hate
glasses
it
for
when you
this.
tell them that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. They hate
Well,
that.
because actually, the mitochondria is a giant thing with like 96 things in it, and the powerhouse isn't even in one of those things. It's in this corner. It's just connected to this one there. It's like it's okay to break things down and talk about cake for the sake of cake without breaking into what actually you do to bake the cake a little bit. It's okay to like be a little bit of a reductionist about it. And I talk to so many people, they'll go, we'll say something, and I'll say something that's slightly wrong or isn't technically true even in the form of a question. Like I'll ask, I'll be like, I was talking with a really, really big activist because I want them to come on, and they were a couple friends with a couple other people who were on the show. And I was talking about one of the flags. I don't want to dox anyone, so I'm not going to get into which one. And I asked a question because I didn't completely understand. I said, so a this is a gender identity. But it also falls into like sexuality. And they immediately went, you're bad faith. You said this to other people, terrible, yada yada, like ostracized. And whenever I comment on one of their posts, they just delete my comments, even if it's a question, like to
Oh
other
dear.
people. They having none of it.
That escalated rather quickly, I'd say.
Yeah, no, immediately. Like they completely, and this is someone who's been on TED Talk. Like they advocate for education of people, but they only ever talk to like the high, already have an understanding, and they can't explain it to anyone below a certain education level.
Yeah,
They
no,
combust.
it is a massive problem, and it should always be remembered that being able to explain complicated things simply is a hallmark of intelligence. And well, you know, no disrespect to my slow friends out there, when you're, you know, constructing the language of a museum to advocate for a minority group, it is important to phrase things intelligently. With regards to this stuff, you know, how to appropriately present this information, we're very prone to infighting and disagreement. People are very immediate. I see this even in my community. You know, somebody will make a statement. I'll be talking to someone, not you, thankfully. They haven't gotten mad at you, but I'll be talking to somebody who's like not a 19-year-old always online trans Twitter user and all that entails. And they'll say something mildly problematic. And by mildly problematic, I don't mean bigoted, not denoting hate. Maybe just like an unfamiliarity with terminology, or like a slight, you know, like acting a little off. And people in chat instantly, it's like they said the N-word, you know, sometimes very quick to be offended. Um, you know, the community is what the community is, but in terms of dealing with these disagreements, um, and appropriately addressing them in the form of like a museum piece, or anything else that has like a you know, pretty high stake behind it, I just think it is important to keep in mind that a lot of people are going to have good faith disagreements, like with gender. If you grew up in America, or God, most places, that's, you know, in the West, I guess, the idea of trans people existing is a violation of essentially like sacred dogma that you've been taught your entire life, you know.
I
People,
think
you know, most people, they don't even need to be taught this. So
no.
some people are going to need a bit of convincing, and that sucks, but it's also just a part of the process, right?
I, I think definitely on a lefty perspective or a lefty example, and this is going to be when your chat actually does start yelling at me. Would a good example would be that incident at Sonic that happened a while back, where you had that one dude and that trans woman just blew up on him with the loaded questions,
I
and
remember.
it's like his language doesn't have gender. There's that chance he might not have known. And he genuinely didn't seem like he was being what's the word I'm looking for?
Prejudice.
Not even prejudiced. Like he genuinely didn't seem like he was being biased or like assumptuous at all. And thankfully, I'm very thankful to your chat. Like you said, I haven't gotten a lot of like attack from them. The only thing I got last time you and I spoke was sexually assaulted by about half of them. I believe I had a better camera back then, which is probably why.
Jesus, chat, reel it in. Don't get me canceled.
They all kept asking for the cute guy's contact. I think my partner got a little salty. Thank you for that, chat. Got me out of a gift. But no, like definitely, I like how your community does keep a bit of an open mind on some topics. Someone followed the channel actually, and they said that this guy, Miniako, they said, I dislike Vaush, but I'm glad he's live streaming with the museum again. Hi, it's us. I've been following them on Facebook and here on YouTube since he first introduced us to them. I don't know why they kept saying them. It was my comment, so it's us. But because that YouTube channel is the museum channel, it's not my personal one. But like, right. I definitely like that level of being able to actually have some contention. Because Marshall said this, and I'll say this again. You know, there's seven full-time members of the museum project. We don't have all 23 flags in it. Like we have a bunch of part-time people. I think we extend into 43 some active people who help with the museum on and off.
It's a lot of people.
It is a lot of people. It's not a lot for the overall project, but it's nice. Like people putting their own genuine time and effort into helping. That's why I say part-time. And some of them will talk. I'll say something I didn't know about. I might leave out gender fay, or I didn't include it in one of our letters, and someone messaged me and they're like, hey, I need to correct you on this. This is the thing. And I'm so sorry, I forgot. Like I try and keep track of what every flag is and means and stuff, but even I'll slip up from time to time. And most of the people I've encountered haven't canceled me just yet, though a couple of them eventually will. And also, I don't want you to yell at your chat too much. It wasn't like sexual harassment. It was just they were flirting with me the way that they do with you sometimes. It was fine. I don't care.
They've been known to do it. It's their outlet.
Yeah. You have to bully them. You have to bully them. I'll never let chat live down. The thing that always gets me, and every time this is the new clip I use when I try and introduce you to someone else. It was when you were talking about that My Little Pony movie. And you were showing the clip of like the pony that's supposed to be Trump, and he's in the background. He slams into the wall, and the blue sheriff's on screen. And you went, oh, that's Trump. And Jack kept saying, like this is the no, it's the blue. He has the satchel, and you just paused it and you started just yelling, "You ignorant idiot!"
They deserve it. And the nice thing about yelling at chat as an entity is that it's kind of spread out across the entire collective. Meaning that it's basically like putting a cushion on them before I yell at them.
Honestly,
it gets flattened out,
You'll be happy to know that like because even with university, because I'm still in a different university, even though I have a bachelor. Always have to educate yourself. I've been at a few like political conferences, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I saw this on Vaush, because I watch most of your stuff while driving, since I drive a lot, or I'll listen to it. And don't keep your eyes on the road, chat. And I'll just show them that clip. Are
you a cop by chance?
No, unfortunately not. I was in the military.
Oh, okay.
Just my cousin's an MP. I was in the military for this. Very odd progression of events. Like my dad's relatively left-leaning. He's one of the types where he doesn't care. Like he might not understand it, and he doesn't want to listen for 40 hours while you explain gender theory, because he really just doesn't care. Like if you want a dress, he'll buy you a dress. He doesn't care. My mom's a little bit more, she self-conscious about what people think. And, when we were younger, we'd watch Fox News growing up. Like that's what the TV was defaulted to. They don't like it now anymore, thankfully, but it's a mess. And just getting to that point, college, Boy Scouts, Bible study, everything worked, going to the military, went through college all the way up to ROTC, to the Army, sign the officer contract 3 weeks in. Anyone in the community gets kicked out. Thank you, Trump. I marched in your inauguration. I carried the California flag, and I now say that as a fuck you. But I got kicked out 3 weeks in, and somehow in my figuring out what to do next, this group pulled me in and said, you have experienced social media. Help us out with Facebook. And now I'm the person who talks for a living, I guess.
Definitely a step up. If nothing else,
the side train.
Military is a good place. There are plenty of men to admire. Oh, wait, what did you get kicked out for?
I have a higher level, I have a hormone imbalance, so I have a much higher level of estrogen. And when they took the reading one day, someone immediately took that and went to the psychiatric guy in the troop and went, "Oh, this kid is dysphoric because of the whole imbalance and stuff." And they didn't even. We were in like Pennsylvania or something. We didn't even do the analysis. I was still early enough that they could do this thing called an entry level separation, which basically means you're exonerated. It never happened. Like they wipe it from your record. And that's like what happens when you're still in advanced camp or basic. It's like you're still in that training thing. You haven't met the full requirements of the contract. You're still in that 90-day period. And Trump had just put the hardcore non-binary and trans person ban on, and because they thought I had dysphoria with the whole blood thing and stuff, and there was evidence that I could, out you go.
Well, that's fucking weird.
This
Jesus, that's like the military. It was like the equivalent of that one black sprinter, the lady with the higher T levels who got prevented from competing. She's just
in
she
the
was
Olympics.
a cis woman.
No,
Yeah. But she had higher T levels just because of her superior muscles, I guess.
It partially was probably my fault because, like, being good friends with Monica Helms and working with Sparta, which is the military trans activist group, and being like, interning with them and working with their spokespeople and stuff. I really didn't build a good case on myself from the whole advocacy and stuff.
So you were wait, so it was a political ousting then? They just assumed like, oh, it's got to be dysphoria then because they were they were in the Sparta group or whatever. That's fucked. Were there any consequences?
I have no idea. There were nothing. I mean, I could rejoin if I want. I can't join as an officer. But
I don't. Well, hold on. Let's not go crazy here. Okay, you're out now. That's fine. Let's not take away from the good work you do. Yeah.
Hey, everyone subscribe to my personal Twitch. I really need to afford insurance if I want to keep working on the museum.
There you go.
I'm fine. I really am fine.
Of course, you're not on Twitch right now, though, right?
Jobs. No,
okay.
No, thankfully. I mean, because that would be bad. No, I definitely and going back to what you said earlier with the where the funding is right now, it's pretty much just everyone involved. Like a lot of the 7 full timers and then the 43 part timers. A lot of them are just other craftspeople who either go to craft fairs, they sell pottery, they sell jewelry, this, that, the other thing. I mean, I have my personal Twitch, and anything I make off that, like a percentage goes to this. I put the most into it. Next, I guess maybe Marshall. But it's largely right now because it's still smaller stuff. Like it's just building a website, doing the domain. I mean, we have people who code; they can build the website for free. The domain is like what, a couple bucks a month. I mean, I just piggyback that with a domain I'd use for me largely. YouTube's free, Twitch is free. It's a good excuse to get a nicer computer to run like servers for the website and stuff because I want to do it anyway for my channel. We try and keep the cost of stuff as low as we can, especially for like traveling to events, because we really like if we go to a let's say a Pride festival. The way we usually do a Pride festival is we'll go somewhere, let's say Maryland, for instance. We did a lot there last year. We'll find a local artisan and we'll show up because we'll have an informational booth. Well, I pay the fee or someone volunteers some money to pay the fee. We go there. We have our side, which has all of the information, and we have this local artisan who's selling their jewelry, their craft or something. A percentage of what they sell goes to assist us because we're working together. Like they're getting the opportunity to have a booth at a large event with a couple hundred people possibly to showcase their works. And we're able to, help them, and they're able to help us because they go, listen, this history is very important. Obviously, I'm a potter. There are a zillion cis potters, but this is why it's different. This is why the community and the culture and all of us were so important together. Listen to these people as they give their spiel with the reading thing, and you can look over pottery while you listen to me talk a lot or whoever's there talk a lot, because we all have copious amounts of ADHD, which brain go burr. You have to hold like 8 different things. And we'll go around to do stuff like that. I think last year when we were at Awesomecon was the only event that we didn't have a person with us. That was purely us, purely information and donations. Though we did test some merch because we were like, we had like 3 shirt designs and we went, okay, poll on which shirts you like. We ended up selling one of the models at the last day because people just get this one group kept coming back like 4 times over. We weren't planning on doing that initially, but right now we're trying to like we'll go to an event and they'll sell some stuff. We'll get a bunch of donations. Usually we'll more than break even. And anything we have from that will just go into the immediate reserve bank. Obviously, we're not crowdfunding the building. Like to build the African American Museum was like 400 million, including security,
Yes.
including the architect, like the artifacts and stuff.
That is
But
a
like
lot. That is a
no,
lot of money.
The money that we're trying to save and the reason we're keeping the other stuff lower is we want to, well, one, we want to keep those costs as low as we can just to be savvy. And two, saving up that money allows us to do more audiential things with larger organizations. Like we've talked with Hershey, for instance, and they're one of the groups that said, we'd love to partner with stuff, but you need to have like the larger, you need to trade up to the nonprofit, which you have to submit a thing, which is like $80 to submit, and it's the whole process and stuff. But even like, talking with congressional people, like if we wanted to schedule meetings with them to talk with writing out proposals for Congress for grants and stuff, a lot of that is definitely where the bigger money would come in. Like if we wanted to have get larger speakers on, because one of the things right now as we enter the whole social media phase is the larger growing in community. Like I think when we first made the YouTube channel, we had like 12 subscribers. And when we did the stream with you, we bumped up to 111 or 107 sometime. You cameoed for about 5 seconds last stream, and we went from 107 to 111 during that period. And it's working with branching out people like that, building, building the Discord, getting numbers in, getting people talking.
I can do you more than that. Hold on. Watch. Dumbasses, make me look good. Go to the channel right now. Go sub. It's called the museum. No. Look, go. Don't listen.
Definitely.
Don't listen to them. Listen to me. Go.
Oh no! Don't listen to me.
They only listen to me. Go. I'm linking it. Go sub.
No,
go.
I wasn't trying to talk to chat at all. What I meant by that was like, because not everyone is not everyone is as cognizant as you are. I know a lot of people don't like you in terms of how you act on the left, but one thing I will definitely say is you're a little bit more, you're in a position where you have the higher ability to be both cognizant and activist when it comes to canvassing for groups. Like, to compare you to two other people, let's just do the extremes. Hassan versus the leftist Al.
Hassan.
Hassan, well, extremes. Hassan, even if he wanted to be cognizant and canvass and like really, really work outside of dealing with people who already on Capitol Hill, like I could send Hassan an email to his public email for like talking stuff. The likelihood of being able to outreach to Hassan is it's equivalent of being able to outreach to Joe Biden right now.
Well, yes, he has grown beyond easy accessibility for sure.
And then, but on the flip side, the likelihood of being able to outreach to someone like the leftist Al, I could DM him on Twitter. He's in Virginia. I could walk to his house, take him out for donuts, spend $10. We could become best buddies. But what does that necessarily get us? Like, because at the end of the day, even if he and I do a stream, it's still going to be the 10 people we already know. And I'm trying to be professional in the way that I'm going about describing this, because the last thing I want to do is come off being like, yeah, I'm a clout chaser and I'm talking with Vaush. No, there's definitely the huge respect and there's the huge like acknowledgement of what you do and the differences in the goals here. But at the end of the day, the only reason that we're going to be able to go back to Hershey and say, hey, do what Hobby Lobby did. I mean, Hobby Lobby gave the Bible Museum like 50% of their cost up front because, well, there was such a huge following. They went to one of those mega churches with the dudes on the airplane and they got signatures on whatever that signing website is from 2 trillion people in probably a month.
I think you should just own it. The issue with like clout chaser isn't when people clout chase, it's when people have nothing else to offer, right?
Right.
It's like, well, you're clout chasing. Okay, well, yeah, of course everyone's clout chasing. You need clout. You need clout for the work that you're going to do, the good work that you're going to do. I need clout because it directly translates into every metric that makes my job possible. People are being frank
Oh
and
God, we got raided.
there you go. Being the one of the few contexts in which that's a good thing. Being frank and forthcoming about metrics and the reason why you're interested in growing. I feel like there's this what would you call it? This false, not humility. This like assumed pretense of humility that everyone has to put up, like this show of, oh, we're not doing this because of the clout, we're just doing this because we're having fun. Like YouTubers will do this when they do collabs and both their channels have 10 million like subs. You really expect me to believe that? Oh yeah, you two are just like friends. Just, oh yeah, sure, okay, this has nothing to do with like the way your job works. Imagine if
From the
people,
pers
sorry, yeah.
No, you're fine. I did cut you off, so that's on me there. What I was gonna say is from the perspective of just my opinion based on sociology, I think it comes into the conflicting definitions. Like, if you were to say someone comes out and says, um, "Oh, you're bisexual," that, or I'm trying to think of a good analogy here. If someone were to come out and say that, you are uh, someone were to come out and say something bad. I don't want to say something bad because it's going to get clipped, which is I'm trying to be cognizant of my analogy here.
Mm-hmm.
You might make the assumption that they fall into the bad side when earlier we talked about how they might not know. They might say, "Oh, you're transsexual." Well, on the one hand, you could immediately take that as bad conservative going after someone. On the other hand, maybe they're 16 and they don't know any better. Maybe they said something that is a racial slur without knowing it was a racial slur because they heard a rapper say it. Like there's definitely the difference there. Like I could come on and say, "Oh, I play video games on my personal Twitch. The True Vampire Prince is what it's called. I made it when I was younger. Shut up, everyone." And I could say like I'm trying to get clout for that. I'm trying to get as many followers as I can. I want to turn this into a job. I want to be Jake Paul. That would be someone clout chasing. That would be bad. If I were to come out and say, when you post the video up to your channel, if you were to post this later as a video, along with the museum YouTube, could you also include my Twitch, followed by, the reason I want you to do that is we don't have a official Twitch for the museum yet because we don't have the staff. We barely have any mods in the Discord. Applications coming soon. Again, that can come off either way. So everyone should follow me for two reasons. One, if I am able to turn Twitch into a full-time career, two things. It's the easiest way to get in touch with me outside of Facebook Messenger or email. So we can actually have live discussions where I might have more than 5 people watching in chat who might ask questions about the museum that I can genuinely answer. And two, if I'm able to do Twitch full time, I can spend a lot more time working on the museum because I'm not doing a 9 to 5 job as a security officer or a 6 to 4, 12 hours a day on one day, 8 hours a day the other day. It's always a mixture for me. Only to then come home and have to decide, okay, am I going to do free time or I'm going to do museum stuff? Like it's that balance. Plus, I put as much as I physically can of whatever I have asset wise into this so that it works the way it's running around. There's definitely the moral dilemma of like feeling bad when you say stuff like that because you don't want to come off as being the bad way. But like you said, there's a difference between saying, "Hey, I want to play with Vaush on a video game because my only interest is being able to do this for a living and make lots of money," versus, "Well, yeah, I want to do it because you seem like a genuinely chill guy, and if I was ever in Seattle, I would honestly want to buy you a fucking cup of tea." And two,
Whoa, hold on. Hold on. This is a goddamn American stream. Okay, we don't drink no tea over here. Apart from that, the sentiment is well received.
Exactly. No, but I'm digressing and I'm ranting, and you understand what I mean. Like, there's the difference between, like, obviously I enjoy it. So when people on YouTube say, like, we're actually friends and we do enjoy it, I do believe there's a little bit of genuinism in there. Like, you obviously enjoy what you do, or you wouldn't be doing it unless, of course, you're a grifter and you get a lot of money. But they don't want to be constituted for a grifter, so they overdo trying to put it off a little too much to the point where it becomes a little sus.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. I mean, at the end of the day, movies featuring Will Smith don't come out and say, oh, haha, guys, we're not including Will Smith because we know he's like a guaranteed box office return. We just really like Will Smith, haha. We just like having him on set, haha. Like, at the end of the day, like, this is business stuff. There's nothing wrong with treating it like a business. It's possible to care about the financials and also care about, the material that you're producing. You have to care about both in tandem because broke artists can't make art, and obviously artistically bankrupt financiers can't make good art. There's a magic center in there somewhere. If you're interested in really getting an online hype train rolling, you're going to have some difficulty, in large part, I think, because the professional constraints of working to finance a museum run contrary to the type of content creation that normally gets a lot of attention, at least the kind of attention that I'm used to getting. The kind of attention that I'm familiar with and that I know the dynamics of, I can be controversial in ways that you cannot. Outside of that, you might be interested in talking to a content manager. I don't know how many official ties you have or how many connections you can pull upon, but there are people whose entire job it is to help build online clout. And many of them are quite good at it as well. So pulling upon their expertise might be really beneficial, at least in the short term, to help you situate yourself online.
I genuinely listened to everything you said. I was just multitasking, scrolling through chat because, I'm trying to discern between people yelling raid and people with genuine questions here. Going off of what you said, yeah, definitely. That's one of the things we're slightly trying to avoid, which is why we're trying to find more in-house group. Because again, all of that costs money. A content manager is very expensive. And I obviously meaningless in comparison to the cost of the actual museum and what we could get overall. So we're definitely looking into it down the line goes. But there is definitely there's definitely a perspective of managing versus having content to manager, and we'd like to build that a little bit more because I'm not coming on every day, at least on the museum channel, flooding it with modern political discourse. We're trying to really hold the museum channel for build up on very specific content for questions about different things and stuff. I feel like I need to answer a question first though from your chat, because I guess there seems to be a misconception. Who said it? Someone said it. Oh god, I lost them. No. Okay. Nathan Olsky, specifically. I'm calling him out because he was not here for the last stream, I guess. Loser. No. He asked where the museum was. In our hearts. In our beautiful, beautiful hearts. The museum, unfortunately, does not exist yet. We started designing the damn thing 5 years ago, and it's taken us 5 years just to decide how to hold all of the flags together, because there's 23 mainstream baseline flags with a bunch of just gray umbrella flags, and it's a goddamn travesty. It's so many words. It's great. It's wonderful. Everyone's being themselves. It's like a fucking D&D campaign of expression. It's beautiful. But we don't have the museum yet, which is why we're trying to build this, public following and campaign, so that way we can go to someone like AOC and say, hey, AOC, we have 200,000 people who've signed this. Fuck, Vaush, what is that thing called online where people can sign a petition? What is that? Is petition.org? What is?
I think petition is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, but what's the actual, it's an actual website.
It's change.org.
Change.org. We have a change. Which we have not made yet. Actually, I should make one of those. That would be a good idea. That 200,000 people have signed. Here's our website, which is no longer taken down by grifting conservatives. Unfortunately, that'll be back up at some point. Here's a Discord. We have all these people in it. Let's go to Congress. Let's write a bill. Let's get genuine support and modeling for this. That way we can like actually showcase this stuff, and it's not locked up in Indiana Jones's basement, which actually has happened to a lot of artifacts. Like we were talking with some people from the Smithsonian back when I interned there, and I was talking with my boss, and I went to a couple meetings in various states, and there's like a lot of things where they've protected it, kept it, taken it, cataloged it, categorized it, and put it in a box in Indiana Jones with the Ark. And they go, yeah, if you get recognized, if you build this thing, we'll let you display it. We can't display it because we're the goddamn Smithsonian. And like, what, you think our sponsors are going to let us display that? But we can't, because we're not the Smithsonian. That's the same thing actually the African American Museum ran into when they first started off. They weren't affiliated with the Smithsonian, but because they got like a majority of their stuff from government funding, and once they got the train built up and it became, publicly acceptable. I mean, we had a black president, of course, it became publicly acceptable in some states, not all. Oh, please, no one, your chat's going to start yelling at me. I'm getting tired. No, but like that's when they became affiliated, and that's when they became like officially Smithsonian part. And that's something we'd eventually like to consider. There's definitely some discourse on the council between being Smithsonian affiliated, because we'd like to pool most of our resources for educations and schools and working with a couple private institutions to try and help lower that ratio, considering 40% of homeless youth have been kicked out because Jesus said so. And like you're definitely limited in the number of public outreach programs you can do when you are officially a Smithsonian institution, because everything has to run through that bureaucracy. But no, we don't have a giant physical building where you can go see the literal trans flag. The original trans flag is sadly still in a crate under 30,000 feet under DC in a basement.
Well, at least it's safe.
Yeah, no, seriously. Like they gave it. I'm honestly 95% sure the only reason it's safe is because it's military. When Monica, she was telling this story last stream. Actually, I should really have her on to tell it again because it is her story. But when she was asked, like the Smithsonian came and asked for the flag, they put her up with a military person because she's Navy, and they basically did like the whole military naval history book, everything she did, all of that fun stuff, and they included the flag into it for the what you did after kind of importance. And they took the flag and they put everything in the military archives, which is like, you don't mess with the military archives. The military archives are one of the most temperature guarded archives in existence. I don't know if it's been moved. It might have been moved to Belvoir because I know they built a new military archives in there, but as far as I know, it's still under DC.
Whereas,
am I hydrated? Yes, I'm hydrated.
Whereas in the America we're building, the military archives will be kept in a moist basement, and the trans archives will be kept in Fort Knox. Am I correct on that?
I mean, you're actually incorrect, because as you may not like to believe, for some reason, everyone in the Navy is either trans or gay. So
everyone knows that about the Navy.
The history is the same.
Yeah, the naval history, gay history, one and the same, one struggle.
Honestly,
against
which is why I love that in the Navy thing, where like the Navy tried to deny in the Navy the music video. I don't know if you heard about that.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
So the bands, the Village People, they made a bunch of songs, and like they made the YMCA song, they made all these songs, and no one knew that they were queer. And not even all of the members were queer. Like it's literally saying out of movies. The guy walked into a bar in Vegas and he literally saw all of he saw an Indian person, a police chief with like all dressed up like that, and he went, "This would be a band." And he basically just made the band after literally seeing a bunch of people in those costumes together. And they made all these songs and no one knew they were queer. So they went to the YMCA, a traditionally prominently, Catholic group, and the YMCA saw like this song and how great it was and how much everyone loved it, and they went, of course you could do a music video for this song in a YMCA building. That would be great publicity for us, our nice wholesome Christian Minecraft server. Little did they know the YMCA's song is literally about having gay sex in the locker room.
Yeah, it's a little gay, I'd say.
And the Navy did the same thing, because the Navy, and again, you can all learn this stuff in the History Museum when it's built. The Navy were trying to build their enlistment campaign or their recruitment campaign, because every year they come out with one of those videos. Right now they have these really dumb Marine videos I hate, but it's like they always do some kind of like thing with videos and stuff. And they go out and they go, okay, we need to find a band that will do something. And one of the captains in the Navy sees the song In the Navy. And it's like, it's about being in the Navy. It's great. And he goes to the band and he goes, will you guys do a music video of this song that we can use as a recruitment ad? Like, will you make like a short, very, very short, like not the entire song, a verse or something? And they go, we will on one condition. The condition being that you allow us to do an entire music video, the official music video for this song on your newest ship or one of your like new battleships. And the guy goes, this is great publicity for the Navy. This is practically free publicity. Of course we'll let you do this. And this is after the era of battleships. It was called a battleship, but it was a lot smaller. So they get this new billion-dollar battleship. They get the entire crew for the battleship as background characters in full Class A white uniforms, and they send them out and have them film this song over the course of multiple days on this battleship. And a couple of the sailors knew about it and like used their leave specifically for that day to not be involved, but somehow it didn't get up the chain why they were doing that. So they all just left, anti-gays. They can leave, do whatever they want.
Yeah, I feel. Sorry, continue, please.
It's almost done. They do the whole song and it comes out and it goes up the ranks and it goes up to like the admiral in charge of overseeing all of this, and it goes to the board. And they look and they go, someone at the meeting of lower ranking, like commander, I think it was, goes, wait, this song is gay. It's about being homosexual in the Navy. And this is around the time that the Navy had their looker job, which I'll get to in a minute. So they, of course, freak out and they cancel, they scrub the whole thing. And the best part about it is the Navy, to this day, denies ever contracting the Village People or orchestrating any agreement with them to make a song for a recruitment campaign, which is BS because the song was filmed on the newest battleship in the fleet.
So they just stormed the ship, It's
stormed the ship.
Yeah, they just boarded it covertly. It's not. There's no cooperation.
For anyone wondering what I meant with the insider job earlier, the Navy had a thing where they discovered there was a lot of gay people in the Navy, and they don't ask, don't tell. You can't have this. So they made a secret job where people would pretend to be gay, and you would get in, and it was like a trap. You'd get in, you'd go to the bar on shore leave, you'd find the cute guy, they'd ask you out, they'd take you back to their quarters, and right before you have sex, you jump out and be like, ha, we're the gay police, and now they're arrested. The problem was this job became concerningly popular. It was a volunteer job. You volunteered, you got the job. It became concerningly popular because they put it out to everyone, not just MPs. Like, they put it out to anyone who wanted to be a tattletale because they thought no one's going to want to do it. MPs aren't going to want to do it. Like, this is a very, like, you don't want to pretend to be gay. It was concerningly popular. They had to stop it basically in a week because the job was so popular. It had such high enrollment numbers, but no one was getting caught for some reason.
Yeah.
Every time the paper came in, it was, didn't find any gay people today.
No problems here. Whatever. Thanks for the leave. I feel like we should be thankful for heterosexual people's apparent inability to properly operate a gaydar. It's probably saved a lot of people's lives over history,
And so for any confusion in chat, it literally wasn't leave. Like, you weren't getting free leave from this. Essentially, you were put in a situation where on the ship, you had a free pass to pretend to be gay and not get in trouble for it. You'd go with this person, you'd take them back to their quarters, but the understanding was nothing's going to happen behind that locked door in the quarters, because right when they unbuckle their pants, you pull out your badge and you arrest them. You're the SS.
The gay police, right.
Right. But no one was getting arrested, and more people were enrolling in the police every single day. It was becoming concerningly popular with very little results.
I did for that show. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, they eventually realized that everyone was just using it as an excuse to have sex.
So what they should have done, though, is eventually they should have just started kicking out the people who were signing up for the job. They were like, okay, clearly these people are the rabble rousers.
Right.
Ernesto over there has signed up for this job 17 times this month, and he's and his he can't talk because his throat's sore. Okay, we clearly, we need to start being more particular with our condemnations here.
No, definitely. Because,
Yeah.
like, people who are like a Frank Burns, any conservative type is going to be too scared to risk the fragile masculinity and sign up for this job. There was another question from chat. I guess some people came late. Someone, I can't pronounce their name to save my life. It's like Havak Galash or something. It sounds native to my language, but I cannot pronounce it to save my life. They said, how about doing some online exhibits like key players in their history or moments that have defined the movement? We're definitely working on stuff like that. Like, we're in partnership with the Gilbert Baker Foundation for some future events. The main problem just with that is COVID kind of axed a lot of it, because organizing in-person events is a huge different ballgame than doing online stuff. And it's like, we could do an online segment where I sit down and do PowerPoints in this day in history and stuff like that. It's just setting up is one of the things we're really hoping from the Discord is being able to accumulate a couple more volunteers, because again, there's only so much history and knowledge that everyone can be aware about. Like, there's a very, and I think Vaush, you were talking about this earlier, there's a very apparent, and I guess always not so apparent, distinction between different tasks. Like, the people who go, yeah, that guy is clearly ricking you on how much this is going to cost. Let me go knock his head a few times. And someone who goes, everyone, welcome to Gender Theory 101. We're going to sit down today. We're going to talk about a couple good movies. We're going to read a couple good books. Like, I've taken some of these courses. I've taken both of these courses. I've taken economics and gender theory. There's a very apparent difference. And unfortunately, as it stands, most of the people able to commit full-time work to the project are the types of people who are focused more on they were focused more on the institutional aspect of it. And as we eventually want to do like a university series we keep talking about on the Facebook page, where it's like we dedicate a month just going down each flag, and it would be 4 weeks, month each flag. First month you talk like queer as a whole. Second month, let's say you do gay. The first week being, what is gay. Monday would be, the general like video on it, followed up by a stream on Friday where we actually can talk with chat, assuming anyone's there. I don't know. Next day would be like it from a personal perspective. The third week would be it from a not personal perspective. You're a mom, you're a friend, you're a teacher, you're someone who cares, someone who doesn't care. I don't know. Third week is that was the third week. Fourth week is kind of the recap on like, okay, this is socially everyone as a whole. We want to wait until we're actually in a position where we're prepared to do that overall stuff like that, or even like talks on different people, because again, talking on like theory of all of the different flags is one thing. I mean, I could scour discords or online things till I find people who study being lesbian for a living, or like sexologists. There are people we've worked with who are actual sexologists, which sounds like a great job, to be honest. And nice lesbian couple study sex. They go to colleges and talk about healthy, being safe, stuff like that. Historians who talk about different movies, bisexuality. Obviously, we have a lot of trans historians with the project, and we could capture different historical people on day-to-days. But it's definitely presents that bar on like, okay, figuring out this specific historical person here, writing the whole article about it, posting it to the Facebook page. I mean, we do share and we do work with a couple different Facebook page groups or historical groups to share stuff from time to time. But it's definitely one of those like, there's only so much volunteering people can do, especially the more detailed you get with that history, which is one of the other reasons I was doing that conversation about clout earlier. Because it's like, if, we're able to get some stuff doing merch, or that's one of the reasons we hoard our donations a little bit and try to be careful about how we use them, because it's not about, at the end of the day, it's about money, but it's not about personal money. I don't care if I make a dime. I really don't. Like, I'm genuinely not trying to be the stereotypical grifter clout thing. Like, I don't care. I've put so much money into a project I believe
You don't
in.
just to say, by the way, you don't, past a point, it's suspiciously specific denial.
Yeah.
Nobody
No,
here
right,
thinks you're a grifter. You don't even need to worry about saying you're not.
Right. No. I have not been live in a while. They voted me into this because they thought I was the most prepared. So I'm still getting through a couple of the cringy like ropes because I haven't been live in quite some time.
No,
I believe you look at your
I'm
own
only
videos.
saying I don't think anyone
Yeah, no, thank you.
operating in good faith or reasonably would ever get that impression. No, in
We have reached out to the University of Victoria's archive. We've reached out to a couple of different archives as well, like internationally and stuff, to do different things with them and different like posts and stuff. We've definitely reached out and we're looking on what to do. But no, chat. If anyone wants to go to the Discord, that's exactly what things like that are for. Like message us on Facebook, post recommendations. If there's a personal group, like June is around the corner. If there's a major festival you would like us to have a booth at, we probably can get some people together and travel out that way. Like we probably could go to various cons and stuff. It's definitely also a lot of like not knowing as well, because even with the 43 people in total, there's only so much knowledge everyone has. So if there are universities or people you want to see talked about or specific things, let us know.
yeah,
Vaush, I'm going to let you take it away because you're more socially conscious in the larger perspective. There's
no,
a lot
oh
of people
no,
in
I'm
my chat now.
autistic. I'm just good at live streaming. We're running to the clock soon anyway.
Yeah, no, I know.
So I wanted to say that, I do hope that things continue to pick up steam with regards to the project, the pacing and the funding, and also the vision as it's built. The difficult thing with this, I think more so perhaps than any other type of museum, is that you have to take a set of subjects that are so incredibly personal to so many people, the lives of so many people, and then you have to make them understandable and approachable to not just the entire world audience, but to an audience of which a portion is going to be by default kind of hostile. It's not enough to be accurate. Accuracy would not be your difficulty here. It's not enough to be specific or thorough. It has to be accurate, specific, thorough, relatable, understandable, and at least to the greatest possible extent, inarguable. Giving your opposition, people who are going to look for excuses to be angry, the fewest possible avenues for finding ways to attack you. And that is an incredibly difficult prospect, but I think the best way to go about it is to remember, and I think this is the case with almost anything outside of highly analytical research, which is that the information is less important than the way you present that information. The Cannibal Museum probably contained just the surface level of the anthropological, historical, and cultural information the museum's curators had on the subject of cannibalism. But they distilled that information down into a form which was the things that I described. Sensational, but approachable, understandable. And in so doing, maybe specifics weren't engaged with to the greatest possible degree, but people are more likely to engage with what's actually there. The communicative element, that's always the difficult part. And for a museum, too, because there's that level of professionalism that you have to adhere to, at least to some extent. Not everything has to be Smithsonian tier, but, it's not live streaming, right? You can't just check out and say whatever you want.
Right.
It's difficult work, but I'm interested in seeing how you overcome these problems.
If you have time, like I don't have anything to say on them because you've led us to our genuinely last three questions, which I haven't asked. I can ask them in succession here since they all pretty much relate.
Go for it.
That just leads us into like, I guess one of the things, I don't know if we're doing this up into a fault of our own weighting a little bit, because chat's talked about, talking about different historical things, or talking about different flags, or talking about different groups. You even mentioned going into a little bit more detail on some of the stuff. You're not going to please everyone, as you've said. And one of the things I was trying to hold off, and some of the people were voting to try and hold off, was some of these talking points until we have a little bit more of a crowd, because we don't want to fall into the BBC category of, well, there's 80 people we talk to, and that's going to be enough to say, like, this is a trans perspective. Like, obviously we're going to miss some stuff. There's a movement in Washington from a chapter out there where trans people are like, okay, I'm a trans femme, but I identify as gay specifically. Like, there's a movement out there. You're going to get into so many nuances. It's crazy. But I feel like there might be some things we could talk about that might have set definitions, which we're holding off until we have a broader sense so we can have a little bit more engagement. And waiting for that engagement might be our own fault because of content. This leads into the second thing, which is like, that just goes into, again, then how we'd handle the mixture of stuff, especially when we come into conflict from the other side, like with dog whistles we might not be familiar with, saying certain things that might fall into the modern political commentary, especially on the social media realm, as we've discussed, very different from the museum. Museum, I can say, here's historical thing be fact. Online, I say that, and I'm inevitably going to talk about some more modernistic stuff, which might lead to some dog whistling and broader
Oh dear. This is a new problem. Uh-huh.
Understandings.
No, I agree.
Can you hold on 1 second?
Oh, sure.
I don't. All right, you're good.
Yep, we got each other now. Hello, welcome back to the world.
Oh my God, Spectrum, what are you doing to me?
Live streaming's hard, you know. It's the keeping that bandwidth up can be tough.
I can't wait till I move and have stable internet.
Yeah, I have a fiber gigabit internet. Fucking rocks.
Did you hear any of what I said, by the way?
Oh, we heard it. Understanding was a bit beyond our capacity, though. If you could repeat it, that would be good.
All right. I'm gonna double check here, make sure we're not at the end here. Okay, I think we're good now. But it was like what you said with the general short version was talking with you're gonna always have dog whistling. You're gonna have that broader stuff we're coming across. It's easy in a museum to pose a question in a questionable way in a historical context as a matter of fact, and people aren't going to like run there who want to oppose you. They might, and even then there's still going to be some level of like how much they can actually say against it. And when you're speaking on the online perspective, there's a little bit more of a broader apparatus to it, especially when you deal with like interpretations or modern analogies and comparisons. Since you are live, you have a little bit way you have to tackle it, and that can run into the whole dog whistles and people with a little bit less intent or favorability or good faith. I just was wondering if you think that we were waiting, if there were things that we should tackle a little bit more that you think we might be waiting too long on because we want to build a little bit more of a following first, because we want to avoid the BBC spectrum of 80 people we've talked to, so we know we have a good source.
I might be the wrong person to ask because I'm renowned for my confidence. I think that in terms of presenting valuable information on gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, queer, whatever issues, you probably have enough in your brain right now to surpass the education of 99% of Americans, and even that might be an underestimation. It's a subject where just by way of us being in the groups that we're in, we're exposed to so much approximate information. I think that it depends on the level of specificity with which you want to engage with stuff. You know, when we're talking about like online debate or whatever, which is a trash fire day in and day out, with no exceptions. It's not so much about what you know as how you can present that information. I think that a rhetorically skilled person with a like infantile understanding of a subject will usually win out over a person with a tremendous amount of education but poor communication skills. With regards to your fear, you know, the BBC
That is
situation,
my fear, by the way.
Well, with regards to your fear, the BBC situation wasn't ignorance, it was malice. The BBC normally has editorial standards that it adheres to with relatively okay consistency. They're not great, but, you know, the publishing the trans thing as a news article with the evidence that they did, that wasn't ignorance. That was deliberate malice. And you're not acting out of malice here.
That might have been a poor analogy, because my direct concern was this, because it's a modern social dilemma, it so closely relates to debates. And once you get into anything political, online left, online right, you're gonna hit the debate sphere one way or another. Someone's gonna be talking about you. And I guess I was worried more about we can present information from a historical context all we want. You're gonna get clipped, and are we prepared to handle that? Like,
then I'll challenge you
with any online experience.
I'll challenge you then. I'll challenge you. Okay. What's subject? I'm Ben Shapiro. Hello. Nice to meet you. I'm 5'6" now.
God, no.
Yeah, I know. There goes 8 inches.
5'6". There goes the manly man, the alpha male.
No, he's got good guns. He compensates. All right, so here I am. Right. Okay, I'm grilling you. All right, somehow you're on my show. What subject do you feel you couldn't adequately hold yourself to? What do you feel like you couldn't talk about? What's your weak spot? What are you concerned about? Have you heard talking points you don't have a good answer to? Is it just a general feeling that you could be overwhelmed by rhetorically proficient bad faith interlocutors? What's got you?
I guess specifically for me, if we had to choose one off the top of my head, it would probably be neopronouns and xenogenders. It's like, I have enough knowledge where I can basically do the standard, but why do you say it's wrong, or like, why do you say it's bad, or like, who cares? Kind of like, I can dance around with their argument, but then to someone on the left that might go, well, he didn't say this thing about it. He doesn't really like it, because it's such a personal thing. Really, can anyone say they know exactly what it is? I mean, it's such a personal person to person. Like, I'd love to have a conversation with Doe sometime on the museum channel, specifically about
those brilliant, those 10 times my brain. You should definitely talk with it. Yeah,
chat, go shout out Doe and link the Facebook to the museum. I really would love to have a conversation with Doe specifically on how the museum intends to tackle that, because that is such a complex topic.
Those got a very is a ripe brain. I mean, too much of it. A lot of meat in the brain. A smart deer. Anyway, I mean, in terms of like how to appropriately handle this, it depends on the audience that you're trying to hit to, right? The problem is people don't realize always that they're not the target audience for this kind of stuff. So with regards to like appropriately defending neopronouns against a Ben Shapiro type, I'll tell you up front, there is nothing you can do with regards to providing an answer that'll keep you out of trouble with the conservatives and the very progressive, kind of maybe a little bit sensitive types. There's nothing you can do. Trying is a waste of time. If you are talking with conservatives, you will always have to speak on these issues in a way which generalizes, which abstracts, which confronts them and challenges them to give their definitions, but in return, you only give like kind of sort of vague counteracts to what they say. And when you're talking in progressive spaces, you can add that specificity, you can add that personal element, but there's no way to do both at the same time. It's always a compromise between outward and inward presentation, and knowing when to deploy those two things is always the key. That's why, did you see that Matt Walsh appearance on Dr. Phil?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's an example, isn't it? You know, people who get very used to presentation inwards suddenly facing an outward audience. If you're a professor and you talk about, gender studies, and your only experience talking about neopronouns and gender studies is with 20 or 30 also well-educated people who are going to, by default, respect what you say because you're the professor and so on and so forth, and then all of a sudden you're on Dr. Phil talking with Christian fascist Matt Walsh, the environment here is very different. Language that flies in one context will not fly in another. Knowing who you're talking to and learning to accept the fact that you won't be able to get, the message across to everyone. I just think that's very important.
Yeah, I guess that's probably the thing that I was most scared of, which I have to remember. I've been really on edge since the encounter with that one person from the community who was just like, I'm like, yeah, someone educational, someone who's, a TEDxer. This is going to be great. So I think it's just been like partially social anxiety, because like I used to be in the spotlight and I kind of left and I'm coming back, but I'll get over it. I'll deal with it. I think that's all we have. Obviously, the only last question would be if you think of anyone or if you want to point anyone our way, any specific conventions or booths. This goes for your chat as well. Like, anyone who like you think would like to work in the project, you and chat. Someone already messaged us about like their aunt who has a huge queer library they've orchestrated and talking with their like that's great. Definitely like. First of all, in the Discord, don't be like Vaush. Don't be stupid. You have to go to the rules and you have to respond to the rules with the book emoji from Fairly Odd Parents. It's literally the rule book. You respond with the rule book. You have access to the rest of the server.
I have never read a Discord rules page in my entire life.
You don't have to read it. You
I'm
just
either
have
there
to
or they ban
respond to
me.
it.
I'm there or they ban me. That's how it works.
Exactly.
You know, it's
you respond to it. You identify that you've at least seen the rules and you're not going to be totally stupid, at least in bad faith. Just respond to there, and then you can send a message in. So my DMs don't get flooded. Go to a general or one of the chats. Talk in it. I'll be in the server and I'll read you, or someone else, one of the other people who works on the project will be able to see it, just so we avoid destroying people's DMs a little bit, since we're going to be getting to that point. I mean, we have 12 people viewing. That's the most I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and you've got
I'm
like
terrified.
700 or 800 subs now, I think. So that's nice. Everyone
stay away from my Twitch. I don't need this.
I'm sure that. Oh, don't worry. None of my audience is trained to not know how to use Twitch. They haven't had a reason to learn.
I'm gonna die.
I sincerely hope that things continue to go well. You know that you're always an email away. I do think Doe would be a wonderful person to talk to. Demon Mama as well. You know, good. I'm saying this, I think, euphemistically. Friends with Doe. Both of them are very gay, gayer than me. I'm using gay in the most general sense here as a kind of all-encompassing, you know, very extremely professionally gay even. Very worth talking to. And by the way, I just wanted to say once more, I do sincerely apologize for the last town hall, my absence. Yeah, I just plumb forgot, so I'm sorry.
Listen, I almost forgot to. It happens. It's moving snow. It's been hectic. I'll make an excuse for you. We all have ADHD anyway, so it's going to go burr. But no, definitely the hard part there is getting in contact with a lot of people too. Like, as much as I'd love to talk with Doe, it's you. I had the fortunality of being able to talk with you when you were still small enough. A friend of mine introduced me to you when you were like very, very, very tiny. And they were supposed to be the one talking, because I'd retired from YouTube. They were supposed to be the one doing all this. They died. It's done. Who cares? I'm gonna be emotionally separated from it. So they left this all with me. They did something stupid. They got caught and they died. And they went small brain.
Wait, did they actually die?
No, socially died.
Socially died. Okay.
They went conservative and they're in prison. They're probably dead by now because of what they did, but I'm not going to go into what they did. They did conservative small brain stuff.
Oh boy. Wait, that was the person who liked me? Oh god.
Okay.
Oh no.
They liked you for good reasons. It's they were all politically grand and great up until they did one action which in America is kind of frowned upon because of we'll just leave it at romantic relationships they should not have been involved in.
Oh,
we'll just leave it at that.
All right. Well, so noted.
I have to out you for that, so that's how I found you.
Well, I'm good to know that my fans keep good company. Well, either way, what matters is that you and I are friends now.
Yes.
You know, that worked. And in all seriousness, I do. Yeah, we disavow. In all seriousness,
we disavow them, chat.
Yeah, I do sincerely hope that we have the opportunity to talk again sometime in the future. And I hope things go well.
You should go to Awesomecon. Don't. It's cold. It's going to be cold summer.
It's also COVID, but I'll consider my priors.
No, that for anyone in chat concerned, they usually they get 70,000 people. With COVID last year, they had 40,000. So if any of you are like,
people.
if any of you are like high concern for anything, especially with Delta and stuff, I know it's 3 days, but don't go. There are other ways to find us, and we'll go up to like smaller Pride festivals and stuff. Maybe we'll go to Seattle. I don't know. We'll find out.
Yes,
But it's always a pleasure, Vaush.
Official Vaush recommendation: don't die.
Yes.
Thank you very
Don't
much
be
for taking the
stupid.
time. I sincerely appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, my dude.
Be well.
All right, you too.